Chapter 272. Pft. When Zhouwen pressed down on the rock, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Blood seeped out of his 7 orifices. He had used the sigh of the king for too long. His organs had been torn apart, causing him to bleed profusely. If it were any ordinary person, they would have long been dead, but Zhouwen still held on. He looked at the rubble that the stone chi had transformed into. If the stone chi wasn't dead, the 3 of them would die here today. Zhouwen no longer had the strength to continue fighting. Lu Yunxian and Lu Qingji also stared intently at the pile of rubble. The entire world seemed to quiet down at that moment. The 3 of them could almost hear their hearts beating violently. After waiting for a while, there was no movement from the rubble. Lu Qingji wasn't sure, but he said with a sense of longing, It's not moving. It seems to be really dead." Zhouwen exhaled and felt the pain all over his body surge up. It made him feel like his skin was being pulled out, but he still pressed down on the rock with one hand. When he pressed down on the rock, Zhouwen could still feel it struggle a few times, but it quickly quietened down as though it was a lifeless object. "Commander Lu, your raincoat." Just as Zhouwen heaved a sigh of relief, he heard Lu Qingji exclaim again. Zhouwen looked at Lu Qingji and saw him pointing at Lu Yunxian with a look of horror. His finger was still trembling. Zhouwen traced his finger and saw that Lu Yunxian was wearing a custom-made raincoat. At some point in time, a gash had appeared on his waist. Although the gash wasn't big, blood was already dripping down from it. The battle had been too chaotic, so Lu Yunxian didn't know when his raincoat had been sliced. His face immediately turned pale as his pupils gradually turned red. "Young Master One, I can't accompany you any longer. I've let Adjutant N down. I failed to complete the mission he gave me and brought you into the ancient battlefield. However, I implore you to bring the stone artifact to the ruins and hand it to Adjutant N. If it's you, young Master One, you will definitely be able to do it." As Lu Yunxian spoke, his pupils turned redder and his breathing became heavier. "Young Master One, I'll be leaving first. I hope that I can still be a member of the Sunset Army in my next life." Lu Yunxian's consciousness became more and more chaotic. He felt the urge to drown his intelligence. He knew that he didn't have much time left. He didn't wish to become a rabid dog-like monster, so he raised his flaming fist and smashed it at his head. "Stop!" Zhouwen endured the pain and ordered Dr. Darkness, who was in companion form, to leave his body and charge at Lu Yunxian. At the same time, he activated Scalpel. Lu Yunxian didn't listen to Zhouwen. He didn't want to die like a rabid dog. However, before his fist could land on his head, Dr. Soul's scalpel was stabbed into his neck. Immediately, his body stiffened and he was unable to continue moving. At the same time, Dr. Darkness came in front of Lu Yunxian. A syringe appeared in his hand and he stabbed it into his blood vessel, injecting the poison into his body. Lu Yunxian felt as though his body was being pierced by thousands of needles. He couldn't help but howl, but the redness in his eyes gradually receded as he slowly returned to normal. Zhouwen struggled to stand up. He held the stone artifact in one hand and picked up the umbrella that had been thrown into the rain with the other. He shook off the blood on it and opened the umbrella again. He walked in front of Lu Yunxian and held the umbrella over his head. "Do you still have armor-type companion beasts? Can you first block the damage from the rain?" Zhouwen unsummoned Dr. Darkness and asked Lu Yunxian. Lu Yunxian's consciousness had almost recovered. He could sense that the virus that had invaded his body was being expelled by the power of pain. "The armor is gone, but there's still a companion beast that should be able to salvage the situation," Lu Yunxian said as he looked at Zhouwen with a complicated expression. In the beginning, when Ensheng asked him to protect Zhouwen, he never expected such a day to come. He never expected so many things to happen between him and Zhouwen. It made him feel like he was in a dream. "Then hurry up and fix it. My body is very weak now. I'm afraid I can't fight anymore." If I encounter another dimensional creature now, I'll have to rely on you, Zhou said. Lu Yunxian gritted his teeth and nodded at Zhou. Then, he summoned a companion beast. It was a snake that transformed into a strange leather belt. After wrapping it around his waist, it happened to block the hole in the raincoat. Zhou body swayed as he sat on the muddy ground that was covered in blood. His body was severely damaged. Even after switching to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, it was still difficult for him to fully recover in a short period of time. The small perfection of Wisdom Sutra's recovery ability is still lacking. If I had Li Xian's immortal body of the god of combat, my injuries should be able to recover very quickly. Zhou sighed inwardly. Young Master One, are you all right? Lu Qingji hurriedly came forward to help Zhou up. Let him rest for a while. Just as Lu Yunxian said that, his pupils suddenly constricted as his eyes widened. Lu Qingji had actually struck out at Zhou head. Furthermore, his palm shimmered with a purple glow like a ghost. The might of his aura was in no way inferior to Lu Yunxian's. In fact, it was even more demonic and powerful. Lu Yunxian couldn't figure out how Lu Qingji, who had yet to recover from his serious injuries, could produce such terrifying strength. Ignoring the seriously injured Lu Qingji, even if he was at his peak, he wouldn't have such strength. Furthermore, Lu Yunxian knew that Lu Qingji likely cultivated in a wind elemental primordial energy art, but his palm was clearly not of the wind element. Time didn't allow Lu Yunxian to think further. Lu Qingji was just too close to Zhou. His palm left Zhou with no room to dodge. Furthermore, Zhou's body was too weak. Lu Yunxian didn't even think as he extended his hand, hoping to use his arm to help Zhou block Lu Qingji's strike. However, Zhou was faster than Lu Yunxian. He raised the stone artifact in his hand and knocked Lu Yunxian's arm away, allowing Lu Qingji's palm to strike the stone artifact. Bam! The stone artifact emitted a blurry glow as the purple glow on Lu Qingji's palm shattered. His body retreated a few steps from the recoil as he stood amidst the blood rain. He stared at Zhou with an odd expression. The raincoat on his palm had already shattered, exposing his naked palm to the blood rain. However, the blood rain failed to invade his body. You aren't Lu Qingji. Who are you? Lu Yunxian stared at Lu Qingji and shouted. Although Lu Qingji was also at the epic stage, he was only considered average among them. Even Lu Yunxian couldn't withstand the blood rain with his bare body, much less Lu Qingji. I'm Lu Qingji. Lu Qingji's expression and voice turned strange. He clearly had a man's body, but his expression and voice sounded like a woman's. Chapter 273. Sitting in the rain of blood, Zhou suddenly stared at Lu Qingji and said, You are a Mei. Of the three types of ghosts Qi, Mei, and Wangliang, Zhou had already seen Wangliang and Qi, but he had never seen a Mei. And now, Lu Qingji in front of him didn't look like a normal human. You sure are smart. You actually saw through my identity. What a pity. I had such a good opportunity just now, but I didn't take your life. As Lu Qingji spoke, his body trembled strangely as strange purple smoke floated out of his 7 orifices. The purple smoke gradually condensed together, turning into a hazy purple figure. However, the figure was enveloped by the purple smoke. Zhou and Lu Yunxian could only see the figure of a woman, but they couldn't see what she looked like. After the purple smoke completely drifted out, Lu Qingji's body collapsed. He no longer had the aura a living person should have. He was clearly a dead person, and his body was rapidly rotting. I didn't see through your identity previously. I just found it strange that you were the only one who could escape. From my point of view, you don't have the ability to escape. Furthermore, I'm a rather cold person. It's difficult for me to trust anyone, so I'm wary of everyone, Zhou said. I see. You can call out my name. I thought you had long seen through my identity, Purple Shadow said with a coquettish smile. Why did you occupy Lu Qingji's body and trick us into coming here? Zhou only wanted to stall for time so that his body could recover a little. The Mei in front of him might be more difficult to deal with than the stone Qi. The stone Qi was powerful, but its intelligence wasn't high. The purple shadow in front of him was full of tricks. That Qi was lucky. It actually swallowed the stone artifact that Lu Qingji and company brought out. By the time I discovered it and rushed over, it had already begun to evolve. I was no longer its match, so I could only think of a way to lure you here, hoping that both of you would be injured. However, I never expected you humans to only have so little strength left. I was originally somewhat disappointed, thinking that there would definitely be no chance this time. I never expected a human like you to appear. What a pleasant surprise. As the Mei spoke, she laughed coquettishly and said to Zhou, I still have to thank you for helping me kill the stone Qi and retrieve the stone artifact. The power in your body is really powerful, even making me feel a sense of fear. It's really amazing. It's a pity that your body is too weak to withstand such a powerful force. If you still want to use it now, I won't even need to do anything. Your body will be directly crushed by that force. Now your body is on the verge of collapse. It's no longer possible for you to fight me. If you hand over the stone artifact with both hands, I can spare your lives and allow you to leave Zhuolu alive. Young Master Wen, leave first. I'll hold her back, Lu Yunxian said as he stood in front of Zhou and stared at Mei with a burning gaze. The Mei only curled her lips in disdain. Your flame power has been weakened by the Rain Master's murderous blood rain to less than 70% of its power. Furthermore, you've just been injured, so your battle power is less than 50%. If I want to kill you, I only need a moment. Where can a person whose body is about to collapse escape to? Looks like you've calculated everything, Zhou said to the Mei. Although he believed in the saying that humans could change their fate, he had to admit that ever since he obtained the bamboo blade, his luck had indeed become extremely bad. He had already been in danger several times. You're luckier than I expected. Since you aren't willing to hand over the stone artifact, I'll have to take it myself. The Mei saw through Zhou thoughts. Her body suffused a purple glow as she walked towards him. Lu Yunxian gathered his strength and punched out with a flaming tiger fist. However, the Mei reached out her hand and grabbed it. Her slender palm that was suffused with purple gas pressed down on the flaming tiger's head. The flaming tiger was instantly extinguished like a bubble. I've said it before. Your combat strength is less than 50%. It's too easy to kill you, the Mei said as she walked. It's not difficult for you to get this stone artifact, but before I give it to you, can you tell me what it is? Zhou asked as he held the stone artifact. There's no harm in telling you. The Battle of Zhuolu back then was actually a clash between two different dimensional lifeforms. The stone artifact was a holy artifact of one side, the Mei said. Wasn't the Battle of Zhuolu the battle between the Yellow Emperor and Qiyu? They were both humans. How could it be related to dimensional lifeforms? Zhou was puzzled. It's true that they are humans, but they represent more than just humans. Otherwise, how could two mere humans invite so many terrifying dimensional creatures to participate in the battle? The Mei said indifferently, the two of them are just representatives of different dimensional lifeforms in the human world. The dimensional lifeform represented by the Yellow Emperor is a race that treats stone as a holy artifact. As for the dimensional lifeform represented by Qiyu, it treats metal as a holy artifact. The stone artifact in your hand is one of the holy artifacts that the Yellow Emperor obtained from the stone elemental dimensional lifeform. According to what I know, in the legends, Qi, Mei, Wang, and Liang are creatures that stand on Qiyou's side. If the legends are right, what use is this stone artifact from the Yellow Emperor's side to you? Although Zhou was stalling for time, his injuries were too severe. It was impossible for him to improve in a short period of time. As he spoke to the Mei, his mind raced as he searched for a chance of survival. However, after some thought, the current situation was indeed as the Mei had said. He was already in a desperate situation. There was no chance of defeating the Mei. He no longer had the ability to fight, and Lu Yunxian was no match for the Mei. The only useful combat strength was Dr. Darkness, but Dr. Darkness's combat strength wasn't strong. His functionality was greater than his combat strength. The Mei had already seen Dr. Darkness's abilities. If she wasn't confident in dealing with Dr. Darkness, she wouldn't have taken action. It's useless to stall for time, but there's no harm in telling you. That stone artifact is extremely beneficial to any dimensional lifeform. As the Mei spoke, she walked over and grabbed Zhou Wen's head with a hand that glowed purple. Lu Yunxian immediately took action. Zhou Wen also summoned Dr. Darkness, hoping to use the scalpel's powers to lock the Mei's body in place. However, when Dr. Soul's scalpel stabbed into the Mei's body, it directly passed through. It didn't have any effect on her. Instead, Lu Yunxian was sent flying by the Mei's purple light and fell into a pool of blood. The situation didn't look good. "Teacher, I can only rely on you to save me now." Zhou Wen was already at the end of his rope. Apart from using the Sai of the King to risk his life again, he couldn't think of any other solution. He couldn't help but think of the tiny box Wang Mingyuan had given him before he left. Zhou Wen remembered that there was a note written by Wang Mingyuan inside. He didn't know what brilliant plan was written on it, but with a desperate attitude, Zhou Wen hurriedly found the box from the chaos space. He opened it and took out the note. Then, Zhou Wen saw 4 words written on the note. "Kneel and beg for mercy." Zhou Wen nearly spewed out a mouthful of blood when he saw the words written on it. Chapter 274. "My teacher, Sai. You're going too far. You're going to kill me." Zhou Wen was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. He didn't feel angry because he never expected Wang Mingyuan to crack such a joke on him. Momentarily, he didn't know what to feel. If kneeling and begging for mercy was useful, there wouldn't be so many humans dying in dimensional zones. After all, there were more people who cherished their lives than their pride. Instantly, Zhou Wen felt like he was at the end of his rope. Although he had the stone artifact in hand, it didn't have the ability to attack. Even if he fed it to a companion beast, ignoring the fact that it had no effect on a companion beast, even if it did, it wouldn't be effective in a short period of time. It required an evolutionary process, and in his present situation, he would probably be finished off by the Mei at any moment. He didn't have the time. "Why don't I kneel down and beg for mercy? Teacher wouldn't do this to me, right?" Zhou Wen couldn't help but have this thought. Wang Mingyuan didn't seem to have any reason to do this to his student. Perhaps it was really useful. However, the Mei didn't give Zhou Wen time to finish his thoughts. She had already attacked with a strange purple light. Zhou Wen hurriedly picked up the stone artifact in his hand to block it. However, the stone artifact was small, and the strange purple light blanketed the sky. It was impossible to block it. When the purple light approached him, it was a dazzling sight. He could even see the Mei in the purple light reaching out to grab his head. The palm was already inches away. Just as Zhou Wen thought that he was doomed, he suddenly saw the purple light in front of him converge. As for the Mei in front of him, her body seemed to be attracted by a powerful magnet on the ground. Her body suddenly sank and with a thud, she knelt on the ground, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Zhou Wen looked at the Mei kneeling in front of him in a daze, momentarily unable to react to what had happened. He saw the Mei kneeling there with both hands pressed against the ground. Her knees and hands were stuck in the mud. Her body trembled as though she was trying her best to prop herself up, but she couldn't. Her head seemed to be attracted by an invisible magnetic force as it sank to the ground bit by bit. No matter how she struggled, she couldn't lift her head. The Mei let out a terrifying scream as purple gas rose from her body. She struggled to get up, but she couldn't move. That invisible and powerful force forced her to bow her head. Is it the power of the stone artifact? This was Zhou Wen's first thought, but he immediately rejected it. The stoneware was still the same as before, without the slightest energy fluctuation. If the attack did not directly hit it, it would not have any reaction at all. The May's attack had not even touched it, so how could it explode with such a strong force? If it could really unleash such powerful strength to protect others, Zhou wouldn't have been able to kill Stone Chi so easily. But if it's not a stone artifact, then all that's left is… It can't be. Zhou turned his gaze to the piece of paper in his hand. It was an ordinary piece of white paper with the words, "Kneel down and beg for mercy," written on it. As Wang Mingyuan liked calligraphy, the words were written with a brush. The words were written in a handsome and stylish manner. Every stroke was filled with charm, and it was indeed rare to see good calligraphy. It was in no way inferior to calligraphy experts. Even Zhou, who didn't know much about calligraphy, could tell that the words were beautiful. However, no matter how beautiful the words were, they were only words written with ordinary ink on ordinary white paper. Zhou looked at the white paper in his hand and immediately discovered something amiss. Although the white paper was ordinary and didn't have any luster, none of the blood threads that kept falling landed on the white paper. It was as though the rain had automatically circled around the white paper. "No way. Teacher. You're not playing with me, right?" Zhou instantly felt as though he had returned to heaven from hell. He turned the white paper in his hand and looked at the words on it. He wanted to see if the words emitted a supreme divine glow that could suppress the May in front of him. Zhou turned the paper around and realized that the words on the paper were still the same. There was nothing special about them. However, when he pointed the words at himself, the May immediately seemed to lose her restraints. She leaped up from the ground, giving Zhou a fright. The May never expected the invisible force on her body to vanish. She immediately lost control of her strength and leaped into the air. Zhou hurriedly aimed the words, "Kneel and beg for mercy," at the May in midair. Immediately, he saw the May, who had soared into the sky, seem to be attracted by a powerful magnetic field on the ground. With a thud, she fell from the sky and landed straight on the ground. She landed on her knees and pressed her hands against the ground. Just like that, she sprawled in the mud that was filled with blood and returned to a kneeling state. "My teacher, you really are my dear teacher." Zhou wished he could hug the note and kiss it a few times. He never expected that the words Wang Mingyuan had written for him would have such an effect. Without any hesitation, Zhou shouted at Lu Yunxian, "Commander Lu, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill her." Lu Yunxian was also stunned by the scene that had just happened. He widened his eyes as he looked at the May kneeling in the blood. With Zhou shout, he immediately snapped to his senses. He gathered all his strength as the flaming general life soul completely erupted. With a flaming tiger fist, he threw it at the kneeling May, who was powerless to resist. The May was unable to resist. Just as she was about to be killed by the flaming tiger fist, a look of panic flashed in her eyes. She slammed her head into the blood and shouted, "Lord, spare me!" In the next second, the invisible force field that was suppressing the May seemed to vanish. The May's figure suddenly soared into the sky and dodged Lu Yunxian's flaming tiger fist. Holy sh**t! Zhou couldn't help but curse when he saw this scene. He wondered if his teacher was reliable. It was fine to suppress her, but what was the point of her begging for mercy? Once the May escaped, wouldn't he be in a perilous situation again? Zhou felt like he was about to go crazy from Wang Mingyuan's antic. You dare accept my bow? You're dead today." The May laughed strangely in the air, but her voice was filled with bone-piercing hatred. After dominating the dimension for so many years, she had bowed and knelt before, but they were all supreme rulers. How could she kneel to a weak human like Zhou? From her point of view, it was the greatest humiliation of her life. With a terrifying purple glow, the May streaked across the void like a demonic purple beam in the night sky, slashing straight at Zhou. However, when the purple beam arrived in front of Zhou, there was another smacking sound. The May's figure appeared from the purple beam and knelt in the blood again. Zhou no longer knew how to describe his feelings. Chapter 275. Lu Yunxian made a prompt decision and immediately attacked the Mei who was kneeling on the ground. The Mei's eyes were filled with indignation and humiliation, but she had no choice but to kowtow to the ground again. At the same time, she shouted, "Lord, spare me." After saying that, the Mei's body immediately lost its restraints. She flew back once again, transforming into a purple fog as she dodged Lu Yunxian's flaming tiger fist. This time, the Mei didn't charge over again. Her face was filled with anger, resentment, indignation, and other emotions. She glared fiercely at Zhou before quickly fleeing into the blood rain. In the blink of an eye, she vanished. "Just you wait. I'll be back." The Mei's voice floated over from the blood water as it gradually became inaudible. Zhou sat in the blood water as he panted heavily. What had happened just now was just too exciting. It made his heart race, and he felt his blood pressure plummet. His blood vessels felt like they were about to explode. "Young Master One, what kind of treasure is this? Why is it so strange?" Lu Yunxian looked at the piece of paper and the words in Zhou hand with an odd expression. "How would I know?" Zhou folded the piece of paper and placed it back into the box. He didn't tell Lu Yunxian that the piece of paper was given to him by Wang Mingyuan. This was because, according to what he knew, although Wang Mingyuan's theoretical knowledge could be considered a grandmaster, his cultivation level was only at the ordinary epic stage. Now, he had written 4 words that could suppress a terrifying epic creature like the Mei. It made the Mei have no choice but to kowtow and beg for mercy. This wasn't an ordinary epic creature. It was simply terrifying. Zhou felt that it was best not to let others know of this matter. Furthermore, he really didn't know why Wang Mingyuan's words had such magical power. As for why Wang Mingyuan had suppressed it without killing it and even left it with a chance of survival, Zhou could only guess that Wang Mingyuan didn't want him to abuse the power of the words. Therefore, he had left the words, "beg for mercy," to give the suppressed creature a chance to live. Zhou didn't know how powerful the 4 words were, but when facing ordinary epic creatures, it was likely a life-saving talisman. This was extremely important to Zhou. "Commander Lu, let's go." Zhou endured the pain and stood up from the muddy ground. "Can you still do it?" Lu Yunxian hurriedly came forward to support him. "I have to do it even if I can't. The former principal is still waiting for this stone artifact to save his life. I have to send it over." Zhou got Dr. Darkness to carry him. "Former principal?" Lu Yunxian was slightly taken aback, momentarily unsure who Zhou was referring to. "It's the missing old Mr. Ouyang. Madame Lan should be trapped with him." Zhou couldn't forget about rescuing the former principal. The others were secondary, so he had blurted it out without paying attention. Lu Yunxian didn't think too much about it. He nodded and said, "Madame Lan and old Mr. Ouyang might be trapped in the passageway. Let's rush over now." Zhou's combat strength was very weak, but he wasn't too worried. This was because at present, there were only 3-dimensional creatures on this battlefield. Dr. Darkness could restrain the Wangliang, and he had a purple air bell that could also restrain the Qi with the note on him. He wasn't afraid of the Mei causing trouble. At the very least, they wouldn't be in too much danger before reaching the ruins. What Zhou was most worried about was that he couldn't find Ensheng and company in the ruins. If Ensheng and company had already entered the ruins, it would be useless for him to have the stone artifact. He would probably have to enter by himself. "Wait a minute." Zhou called out to Lu Yunxian and got Dr. Darkness to carry him to the dead stone Qi. The battle had been too intense, so Zhou hadn't seen if the stone Qi had dropped anything. Lu Yunxian had also forgotten about this matter. Seeing that Zhou couldn't move, he hurriedly walked over and helped move the rocks away to see if there were any crystals inside. Suddenly, Lu Yunxian's eyes lit up. Under a rock was a gray stone egg. It was about the size of a fist and looked like a gray frosted pebble. "Companion egg?" Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian were delighted. The stone chi was so powerful. As long as one's luck wasn't too bad, the companion egg that dropped wouldn't be weak. Young Master One, keep the companion egg well. This companion egg is no trifling matter. In the future, when you advance to the epic stage, you can hatch it. It will definitely be of great help. Lu Yunxian had seen how powerful the stone chi was, so he knew that the companion beast was no trifling matter. Zhou Wen nodded and took the companion egg. Then, he got Dr. Darkness to carry him. The sky was dark, and amidst the bloody rain, Lu Yunxian and Dr. Darkness walked one after another. Lu Yunxian led the way while Dr. Darkness carried Zhou Wen with one hand and held an umbrella in the other, shielding Zhou Wen from the wind and rain. Zhou Wen held his phone and shone it at the stone chi egg. Indeed, information appeared on it. Mutated stone chi, epic life providence, stone beast ghost life soul, stone dragon sun strength, 40 speed, 34 constitution, 40 primordial energy, 40 talent skill, stone eye, earth spear array companion form, stone armor. It was a very powerful companion beast. Its 3 stats had reached the limit of 40 points at the epic stage. It also had 2 offensive skills. Together with its life providence and life soul, it was considered a top-notch companion beast at the epic stage unless it encountered its nemesis. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen's present primordial energy wasn't enough to hatch such a top-notch epic companion beast. All he could do was store it in the chaos space. Zhou Wen lay on Dr. Darkness's back and took out his phone to continue gaming. With Dr. Darkness shielding him from the wind and rain, he didn't find it tiring. With his attention on the game, Zhou Wen felt less pain in his body. What Zhou Wen wanted to do now was to find the source of the beheading power in the ruins and think of a way to resolve this problem. If Sheng and company had already entered the ruins, he would have no choice but to enter with the stone artifact. If he couldn't find the source of the beheading power, he wouldn't be able to enter. Even if he charged in without any regard for his life, he would only be sending himself to his death. It was meaningless. After walking for a while, Lu Yunxian didn't hear Zhou Wen speak. He turned his head to look at Zhou Wen and realized that he was lying on Dr. Darkness's back, frantically fiddling with his phone. He couldn't help but marvel inwardly, young Master One is indeed young Master One. In such a place, he can actually game with such a relaxed attitude. I wouldn't be able to do it no matter what. It's no wonder he has such achievements at such a young age. The human psyche was a very strange thing. Once a person was determined to be bad, then no matter what that person did, it would be bad. However, once a person was determined to be outstanding, they would feel that whatever that person did was good, and they would come up with thousands of explanations for it. Lu Yunxian was in such a state. No matter what Zhou Wen did, he felt that it was lofty and profound. I hope Sheng hasn't entered the ruins yet. Zhou Wen was somewhat worried. Chapter 276. Ghost Bride didn't dare enter the underground tunnel, so Zhou Wen let her circle the ruins. The ruins spanned more than 5 kilometers and were basically filled with broken stone walls and stone pillars. There were no dimensional creatures to be seen, and even the blood rain had become much smaller. Ghost Bride had already searched the ruins several times, but she still couldn't find the problem. She sent her companion beasts in, but apart from Ghost Bride, all of them had their heads chopped off. It's impossible that there aren't any clues. Since Ouyang Lan and Sheng can enter, it means that they must have discovered the source of the beheading power. Zhou Wen repeated it again and again, letting his companion beasts walk in one by one. Then, he saw how they had their heads chopped off, hoping to find clues. It was true that he couldn't tell anything with his eyes, but after repeatedly listening with Truth Listener, Zhou Wen finally discovered the problem. Every time Zhou Wen's companion beast's head was chopped off, he would hear an extremely faint sound. The sound wasn't the sound of bones and flesh being chopped off. Instead, it was an extremely secretive sound that sounded like a breeze blowing. But if it was the wind, then it was a bit strange, because the inside of the ruins was very strange. Even the blood rain outside suddenly stopped floating when it entered the ruins. The blood rain slowly fell vertically like snowflakes, and there was no trace of the wind at all. However, when the pets were beheaded, Zhou did hear the sound of the wind. He made the gold-armored beast walk into the ruins again. Zhou closed his eyes and used Truth Listener's ability to listen carefully. As the gold-armored beast walked, its head was suddenly chopped off by something, but there was nothing there. Wind. It's indeed wind. Zhou suddenly opened his eyes as the blood-colored avatar looked at the gold-armored beast's corpse in the ruins. At the instant the gold-armored beast's head was chopped off, Truth Listener's ability had indeed captured traces of the wind. However, the wind appeared out of thin air and didn't come from the outside world. It was as though it had suddenly appeared on the gold-armored beast's neck and chopped off its head. It's impossible for the wind to appear for no reason, but there's no wind from the outside world blowing at the gold-armored beast. Then, where did the wind come from? Zhou frowned in thought. Commander Lu, do you know how the wind is formed? Zhou suddenly looked up and asked Lu Yunxian, who was scouting ahead. Lu Yunxian thought for a moment and said, according to previous scientific explanations, the wind is a natural phenomenon produced by the flow of air. Under normal circumstances, the kinetic energy that causes the wind is the heat of the sun. The surface's temperature rises due to the sun's illumination, causing the surface's air to expand and rise. After explaining the formation of the wind, Lu Yunxian said, I didn't do well in school. This is all I remember. Young Master One, am I right? My results are worse than yours. Zhou fell into deep thought after hearing Lu Yunxian's words. Zhou didn't sense any abnormalities in the temperature in the ruins. Furthermore, the blood rain fell vertically without any signs of airflow. He couldn't figure out why the wind had appeared out of thin air. Battalion Commander Lu continued, but in this era, there are many things that can't be explained by science. Speaking of wind, I thought of something. When Madame Lan saw the blood rain, she said that the blood rain might be the blood rain of Qi Yu's subordinate, the Rain Master. Also, there is a god who is as famous as the Rain Master and also works under Qi Yu. This god is proficient in the power of the wind. I heard from Madame Lan that he has a type of wind power called the Realm Wind. What's Realm Wind? Zhou heart stirred as he hurriedly asked. Commander Lu's words reminded him that the Count of the Wind and the Rain Master were equally famous. The entire ancient battlefield was covered in blood rain, but he didn't feel the power of the wind. The wind that appeared out of nowhere in the ruins was very likely related to the Wind Count. Actually, I'm not too sure either. I only heard a few words from Madame Lan. After a pause, Commander Lu continued, Wind is the result of the flow of air, but this is only for a world. If two different worlds are opened up, the air in the two worlds will also flow. And the Count of the Wind has this ability. It's called the Realm Wind. As for how the Count of the Wind did it, or if the Count of the Wind and the Realm Wind really exist, that's not something I know. Zhou thought for a moment, feeling that Commander Lu's words had inspired him greatly. It was impossible for wind to appear out of thin air, but in the ruins there was wind that appeared out of thin air. If it was said to be the wind produced by the intersection of different worlds, it seemed to make sense. Could it be that the decapitation in the ruins was done in secret by the Count of the Wind? Zhou thought about it and felt that something wasn't right. A mythical figure like the Count of the Wind didn't need to use such tricks. A casual breath from him could probably kill countless epic experts. If it's not the Count of the Wind, it should be a dimensional creature with powers similar to the Realm Wind. It must be hiding in the ruins. As long as I find it and kill it, I can safely enter the ruins. But how can I find it? Zhou felt a headache coming on. Ghost Bride had already searched the ruins several times, but she didn't find anything. It was very likely that the wind elemental creature had been lying in the dark, making it difficult to find him. If only Banana Fairy was here. She's also wind elemental, so she should be able to have a certain effect. Zhouwen glanced at the chaos space and saw that the tornado was still blowing. As for the goddess of wind's protection, after Banana Fairy ate the gem, the necklace was useless. It even no longer had the ability to be immune to the wind element. As Zhouwen studied it, he encountered two more Wangliang along the way. They were finished off by Dr. Darkness, so he didn't encounter any more trouble. The Mei was nowhere to be seen, as though she had really escaped. When the two of them arrived in front of the ruins, they saw a few tents in front of it. There were also people in special raincoats patrolling. Zhouwen, why are you here? The patrolling person was first taken aback when he saw Zhouwen and Lu Yunxian before coming over to greet them. Zhao Xian, where's Nxing? Zhouwen recognized that the patrolling person was Zhao Xian and couldn't help but be delighted. Since Zhao Xian was still here, perhaps Nxing and company hadn't entered the ruins. Adjutant and has led people into the ruins. It's been almost a day. Young Master One, it's best you return quickly. It's too dangerous here, Zhao Xian said. Zhouwen frowned and continued asking, isn't there a terrifying power of decapitation in the ruins? How did Nxing and company enter? Chapter 277. It's indeed very strange and terrifying. In the beginning, we sent quite a number of companion beasts in, but every one of them was beheaded. Only 2 companion beasts were lucky enough to survive. Adjutant and said that it's called the wind of space. It's a powerful wind produced by the convection of 2 different spaces. As the wind of space comes and goes without a trace, it's very difficult to withstand it unless one's entire body is flawless. Zhao Xian paused for a moment before continuing. Adjutant and finally thought of a solution. He got 2 epic experts who are proficient in spatial powers to be in charge of disrupting the spatial order. That way, the wind of space can't quickly form. After trying it, he realized that this method was indeed effective. However, the area that the 2 of them can support is limited, so they can't bring everyone in. The other 2 fellows and I can only stay here and wait for Adjutant and the rest to return. Did Anxing say where he took them to in the ruins? Zhouwen asked. I don't know. Adjutant and didn't say. He only said that he was going to the ruins to search for Madame Lan and Old Master Ouyang. He didn't say where he went either. Zhao Xian shook his head. Zhouwen looked at the distant ruins and felt somewhat vexed. Although he now knew that there was a power similar to the realm wind in the ruins, Zhouwen didn't know any spatial powers, nor did he have the ability to stop the realm wind. Even if he knew the characteristics of the realm wind, he still couldn't withstand it. What are you doing here? Zhao Xian asked. I have something here that I need to give to Anxing. It might be of help to him in saving Madame Lan. Do you have a way to contact him? Seeing the other 2 epic experts walk out, Zhouwen didn't mention the stone artifact. All he did was ask vaguely. The signal interference here is very strong. Communications equipment is useless. Unless they come out, I'm afraid it's impossible to contact them, Zhao Xian said. The other 2 were alarmed when they saw Zhouwen. They pointed at him and said, You aren't wearing a raincoat. How are you not infected by the virus? Zhao Xian was taken aback when he heard that. Only then did he realize that Zhouwen was only wearing ordinary armor without a raincoat. From the style of his armor, it was impossible for it to cover every part of his body. He would definitely be stained by the blood rain. I have a way to restrain the blood rain. You don't have to worry. Leave a tent for me, I need some time to rest. He had to wait until his injuries were mostly healed and he had the ability to fight before thinking of a way to deal with the realm wind. Otherwise, entering would be suicide. It would be useless. Zhao Xian pointed to one of the tents and said, That's Adjutant An's tent. You can stay with him. Zhouwen didn't stand on ceremony as he entered. The inside of the tent was clean and tidy. There was even a small battery-powered lamp on. There were some books on the side and a small incense burner. and Xing sure doesn't find it troublesome. He actually brought so many things to such a place. Zhou found a spot to sit down. As he circulated the small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra to repair his injured body, he continued gaming. Zhao Xin and company led Lu Yunxian into another tent and said with a smile, "Battalion Commander Lu, it must have been tough on you to send Zhou to such a dangerous place, right?" Lu Yunxian glanced at Zhao Xin and company and said coldly, "This is my duty. Besides, without young Master One, I wouldn't have come this far." "What do you mean?" The three of them were taken aback as Zhao Xin asked Lu Yunxian. However, Lu Yunxian didn't answer. All he said was, "Prepare yourselves. When young Master One recovers, we will enter the ruins with him to find Adjutant," and the trio looked at Lu Yunxian as though they were looking at a lunatic. Zhao Xin licked his lips and said, "I know that your Sunset Army is famous for not being afraid of death, but do you know how terrifying the spatial wind in the ruins is? Do you know how many powerful companion beasts died silently in there when we first started scouting? That's not a place that anyone can enter just because they want to." "Young Master One will think of a solution," Lu Yunxian said indifferently. Zhao Xin and company exchanged looks, feeling that Lu Yunxian was definitely crazy. What solution could he think of in such a place? Without the ability to restrain the spatial wind, entering was courting death. There was no other way. No matter how smart Zhou was, he didn't have spatial powers. Furthermore, he was at the legendary stage. How could he safely enter the ruins? Since they couldn't see eye to eye, Zhao Xin and company ignored Lu Yunxian and did their own things. Zhou really couldn't think of a solution. Even though he knew the characteristics of the realm wind, it was useless without a way to restrain it. After some thought, Zhou could only use ghost steps to escape the moment the realm wind appeared, preventing it from hitting him. However, Zhou had tried it a few times in-game. The difficulty was extremely high. The spot where the realm wind appeared was almost right next to his skin. If his reaction was a fraction of a second slower, he would be dead. Out of 10 times, Zhou could barely dodge 1 or 2. Even so, there was a component of luck. Ghost Steps was very fast, but that referred to speed. Zhou's reaction speed wouldn't improve because of it. When faced with the sudden realm wind, Zhou's reaction speed was clearly insufficient. "I have to be able to dodge the realm wind. How can I react faster and dodge it safely?" Zhou kept researching in-game. Zhou was fully focused on researching in-game. When Zhao Xin and company came to deliver the food, they saw Zhou sitting there playing with his phone. They smiled and didn't say a word. Zhou playing with his phone wasn't anything special to them, nor did they find it inappropriate. However, when they connected it to what Lu Yunxian had said, they found it laughable. When they returned to the tent shared by the 4 of them, they saw Lu Yunxian still making preparations. He looked like he really wanted to set off for the ruins. Zhao Xin couldn't help but laugh and say, "Commander Lu, Zhou is still gaming there. I don't think we can head to the ruins anytime soon. You should rest for a while." "I will go," Lu Yunxian said indifferently. Seeing how stubborn Lu Yunxian was, Zhao Xin didn't say anything else. He lay on the mat and took out his phone to find a game to play. It wasn't that he really liked playing games, but that the pressure in such a place was too great. If he didn't find something to do, he was afraid he would go crazy. Zhou constantly honed his reaction speed between life and death. He had to react 100% correctly. He couldn't make a single mistake before he could enter the ruins. In the game, he could die if he made a mistake. He could restart with a drop of blood, but in reality, he only had 1 life. If he died, he would die. There was no chance for him to restart. How can I do it 100% without making any mistakes? Soon, Zhou realized that it was impossible for him to not make any mistakes even if he practiced to the extreme. Out of 10 times there would always be 1 or 2 mistakes. This was because the realm wind's speed had exceeded the critical point of his reaction. No matter how well Zhouwen did, it was impossible for him to perform exceptionally well every time to dodge the Realmwind's attacks. Chapter 278. If my reaction can't be perfect, I can only think of a way to predict when the Realmwind will appear. Zhouwen knew that unless he advanced to the epic stage, it was impossible for him to dodge all the Realmwind attacks. When Truth Listener can hear the sound of the Realmwind, it'll be too late for me to react. However, what should I do to discover where the Realmwind will appear faster than Truth Listener? Zhouwen thought to himself. Using his eyes definitely wouldn't work. His eyes couldn't see the existence of the Realmwind at all. It would be even more ridiculous to use his body to sense it. When he felt the Realmwind approach him, he would be decapitated. What should I do? What should I do to predict when the Realmwind will appear? Zhouwen tried again and again, but the outcome wasn't ideal. He decided to remove Truth Listener's companion form and let it play in the tent. He was used to the convenience Truth Listener brought him. After suddenly losing it, Zhouwen felt like he had become blind. Although his eyes could still see and his ears could still hear, he found it very awkward, as though something was missing. Indeed, I can't rely too much on companion beasts. Otherwise, it will greatly affect my abilities. Zhouwen took a deep breath and calmed himself down before controlling the blood-colored avatar to walk into the ruins again. Truth Listener jumped onto Zhouwen's shoulder and looked around. When its gaze landed on Zhouwen's pocket, its eyes suddenly lit up. With a leap, it jumped into the pocket like a diver. Inside the pocket was the stone artifact that Zhouwen had snatched back. Truth Listener landed on the stone artifact and used its claws to touch it a few times before sticking out its tongue to lick it. As though it wasn't satisfied, it opened its mouth wide and swallowed the stone artifact. Its body was small and wasn't even as big as the stone artifact, but it managed to swallow the entire stone artifact. Its tiny stomach only bulged slightly. It was unknown how it did it. Zhouwen was now completely immersed in the game. Furthermore, he had just lost Truth Listener's ability. With Dr. Darkness and Truth Listener guarding the tent, he would know immediately if anything happened, so he didn't think too much about it. However, Zhouwen never expected Truth Listener to steal what it was guarding. It swallowed the stone artifact that Zhouwen had painstakingly snatched back. Then, with a kick, it fell straight into Zhouwen's pocket. The golden fur on its body gradually turned into the color of a grayish-white stone. Its entire body was rapidly petrifying. In just a few breaths, it had turned into a miniature monkey stone statue. However, the changes in Truth Listener's body didn't end there. From its body, it secreted a substance similar to stone liquid. The stone liquid gradually enveloped its body, and soon Truth Listener turned into an egg-shaped stone. Zhouwen had no idea of the shocking changes that had happened in his pocket. Otherwise, he would definitely have stopped Truth Listener. After all, the stone artifact was the key to saving Ouyang Lan and the former principal. He couldn't just lose it. Zhouwen constantly fought as he felt the impact of the Realmwind on his life. Without Truth Listener's ability to support him, the blood-colored avatar's death rate soared once again. Sometimes he wouldn't even survive 1 out of 10 times. However, under the stimulation of death, Zhouwen, who didn't have Truth Listener's support, vaguely seemed to grasp something, but he couldn't be sure. As the drops of blood vanished, Zhouwen's senses became sharper and sharper. Unlike Truth Listener's pure hearing, his eyes, nose, ears, and even his skin became sharper and sharper under the stimulation of death. His overall perception improved greatly. Finally, Zhouwen controlled the blood-colored avatar to take a step forward, and at the spot where he had been standing, a stone pillar was sliced apart by an invisible Realmwind that appeared out of thin air, collapsing to the ground. I succeeded. Zhouwen was delighted. He seemed to have grasped something, but he still needed to succeed time and time again to prove that his feeling was correct. Time after time, Zhouwen constantly dodged. The chances of the Realmwind injuring him were decreasing. Zhou was finally certain that he had grasped the key to avoiding the realm wind. "I've finally done it." Zhou was delighted. He wanted to summon Truth Listener back and try to see if he could better predict the appearance of the realm wind with Truth Listener's augmentation. However, after summoning twice, he didn't feel Truth Listener return to his ear. He couldn't help but look around. All he saw was Dr. Darkness standing silently in a dark corner, but Truth Listener was nowhere to be seen. He couldn't sense where it was either. Just as he was feeling puzzled, Zhou expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly touched his pocket and his expression turned even uglier. The stone artifact was triangular, and the stone his fingers touched was clearly in the shape of an egg. He hurriedly took out the stone in his pocket. Indeed, it was a stone egg the size of a fist. However, it had Truth Listener's aura on it. "I was careless. Why didn't I guard against that thief, Truth Listener?" Zhou regretted it. The current situation was very obvious. Truth Listener had definitely swallowed the stone artifact, resulting in such a change. Perhaps it was evolving. If it was just an ordinary treasure, Zhou wouldn't be reluctant to swallow it no matter how precious it was. After all, Truth Listener was his main combat pet. However, this thing might have been used to save the former principal and Ouyang Lan's life. Now that it had been swallowed by Truth Listener, Zhou was momentarily at a loss as to what to do. Smash the stone egg and see if the stone artifact is still inside? He naturally couldn't do such a thing. "I can only bring the stone egg in to give it a try. The stone egg should have the power of the stone artifact. Perhaps it can replace the stone artifact's effect." Zhou really had no choice but to try his best. This time, Zhou didn't dare be careless. He directly placed the stone egg into the chaos space, but when he saw the scene inside, he couldn't help but be delighted. He saw that the tornado that had been spinning had weakened. It had become thinner and thinner, floating in midair like a wind egg. Bam! The wind egg dispersed and a cyan light appeared from inside. Dressed in cyan clothes, Banana Fairy, who looked like a little fairy, flew out on a banana leaf. She moved in the air like a fairy in the wind. She had grown quite a bit. Every move she made seemed to have an invisible wind attached to her, causing her dress to flutter in the air. It looked like she had a hairdryer effect. Banana Fairy has completed her evolution? Zhou was pleasantly surprised. This was the best news he had received during this period of time. Chapter 279. In the past, the banana leaf was only the size of a palm, but now it was the size of a normal fan. As for Banana Fairy, she had grown to the size of a slightly larger doll. Sitting on Banana Fairy, she fluttered with the wind like a little princess in the wind. After Zhou released her from the chaos space, Banana Fairy kept flying around Zhou, looking very happy. "You're finally here." Zhou extended his hand and beckoned. Banana Fairy flew over from the banana leaf and landed on Zhou. Zhou immediately felt a cool breeze surround him, making him feel cold. After stroking Banana Fairy's head, she transformed into a cyan stream of light and fused into Zhou's body, turning back into the banana leaf tattoo. Zhou dripped a drop of blood on his phone and transformed back into the blood-colored avatar. He looked at Banana Fairy's new stat. Banana Fairy. Epic Evolvable, Life Providence, Great Een Spirit Root Life Soul, Divine Wind Immortal Strength, 41 Speed, 41 Constitution, 41 Primordial Energy, 41 Talent Skill, Grand Een Wind Companion Form. Fan as Zhou expected, the stats were 1 point more than the original 20. He didn't know what the additional point was for, but he had a nagging feeling that this stat wasn't simple. The skill was still only Grand Een Wind, leaving Zhou somewhat disappointed. He originally wondered if he could comprehend another skill after the evolution, but it was still a single skill. The Great Een Spirit Root's life providence didn't change. The greatest change to Banana Fairy was her life soul. The Divine Wind Immortal Life Soul was undoubtedly very useful for wind elemental skills. As for the true effects, he had to test it out to know. Zhou clicked open the Zhuolu Instance Dungeon, hoping to see how powerful the evolved banana fairy was. Soon, he encountered a Wangliang. Zhou extended his hand and beckoned. Banana fairy appeared in front of him and sat on the banana leaf. When she saw the Wangliang charge at her, she immediately puffed up her cheeks and pouted her lips, blowing at the Wangliang. An invisible cold wind suddenly blew, and Wangliang's body was blown away by the wind, tumbling far away in the air. At the same time, his body seemed to be frozen at an extreme speed, quickly turning into an ice sculpture in the wind. Bang! It was unknown how far the Wangliang's body flew before it shattered in midair, turning into ice fragments that filled the sky. Even the Wangliang bead in its body shattered. It died a violent death as a dimensional crystal dropped to the ground. Too strong. Is this the absolute suppression of strength? Zhou was pleasantly surprised. This wind was definitely the strongest epic creature he had ever seen. There were probably only a few creatures of the same level that could not be blown away by a single blow from her. On Banana Fairy's body there was a faint wind flowing. As the wind flowed, Zhou could vaguely see a transparent woman's figure. She looked like an immortal or a god. It was likely Banana Fairy's life soul, Divine Wind, Immortal. Originally, Banana Fairy could only use the Grand Een Wind once before her primordial energy was depleted. However, with the Divine Wind Immortal Life Soul, Zhou realized that Banana Fairy's primordial energy was rapidly recovering. It wouldn't take long before she could use the Grand Een Wind again. In that case, Banana Fairy will have the possibility of continuing the battle. Zhou was delighted. Now Banana Fairy was the strongest combat force by his side. With Banana Fairy, he would be much safer in the ancient battlefield. Zhou extended his hand and beckoned. Banana Fairy transformed into a jade-like palm leaf fan that landed in his hand. Now, the fan was about the size of an ordinary fan. It wasn't as tiny as before, so it was just right for Zhou to hold. Zhou sized up the banana fan that Banana Fairy had transformed into. It was jade-like and cool to the touch. On the fan's surface, there was a portrait of a lady. It seemed somewhat different from the previous banana fan. Zhou didn't know if he would have as strong an effect as Banana Fairy if he used the banana fan. After all, Banana Fairy had 41 primordial energy, while he only had 21. There was definitely a huge difference in strength when using the same Grand Een Wind skill. As he continued walking forward, he soon encountered a Qi. Zhou used it as an experiment and saw the Qi's black dragon life soul spew out black smoke. This time, Zhou didn't use the purple air bell. Instead, he used the banana fan to fan it. Wherever the wind passed, the black smoke was blown back and pounced on the Qi's body. Then, the Qi's body was thrown far away by the wind. The black smoke immediately made the Qi fall into a deep slumber, and the Grand Een Wind from the banana fan caused layers of ice to form on the Qi's body. However, when Zhou used it, the Grand Een Wind was indeed much weaker than Banana Fairy's. It failed to freeze the Qi's body, and only threw it far away. However, even so, Zhou was very satisfied. He was only at the epic stage. After using the Grand Een Wind, he could send an epic creature like the Qi flying hundreds of feet away. Furthermore, he could freeze it into an ice sculpture. It was already quite impressive. Now, let's see if Banana Fairy can restrain the realm wind in the ruins. Zhou rushed out of the ruins at full speed and encountered another Qi on the way. He easily killed it without any effort. When he arrived outside the ruins again, Zhou got Banana Fairy to return to her true body and followed the blood-colored avatar into the ruins. Zhou had been observing his surroundings. His perception of the realm wind was already very strong. Even without Banana Fairy by his side, he was confident that he could dodge the attacks of the realm wind. However, Zhou still wanted to see how Banana Fairy would deal with the realm wind. As Zhou was thinking, he suddenly felt a slight fluctuation in space. He knew that this was a sign that the realm wind was about to appear. Without any hesitation, he dodged, but he didn't take Banana Fairy with him. The wind was like a blade as it instantly slashed at Banana Fairy's neck. However, Banana Fairy didn't seem to feel it. She sat on the banana leaf and swayed as though she didn't notice the realm wind. No way? Is the wind elemental Banana Fairy so slow to sense the realm wind? Zhouwen found it odd, but in the next second, he gaped. The realm wind that approached Banana Fairy suddenly spun around like an invisible wind blade. It circled around Banana Fairy's body, causing faint ripples to appear in the surrounding space. Banana Fairy extended her hand and beckoned. The realm wind automatically landed on her palm, as though it was a remote-controlled spinning blade under her command. It kept spinning. Then, with a flick of Banana Fairy's hand, the invisible realm wind immediately spun and flew out. Crack! A stone pillar in the distance was sliced apart by the realm wind. Bright red blood spewed out from the stone pillar as there was a strange scream. "Little Banana Fairy, you're really impressive." Zhouwen wished he could summon Banana Fairy, hug her, and kiss her on the cheek. With Banana Fairy by his side, he could come and go as he pleased in the ruins. He no longer needed to worry about the terrifying realm wind. Chapter 280. A notification popped up in-game that he had killed an epic creature, realm wind insect. Zhouwen walked to the stone pillar that had been sliced apart by the realm wind and saw a hole in the middle of the stone pillar. Inside was a bug that looked like a cricket, but it was more than a foot long. However, it had already been sliced into two along with the stone pillar. So this is the thing that's causing trouble in the ruins. Zhouwen looked at the bug's appearance and never expected it to have such destructive power. Thankfully, I have Banana Fairy. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy to find it. Zhouwen got Banana Fairy to continue searching for realm wind insects in the ruins. He planned on killing a few more to determine if Banana Fairy could perfectly restrain the realm wind insect. However, Banana Fairy's performance was better than Zhouwen had imagined. As long as the realm wind appeared and wasn't too far from her, it would be controlled by her. Instead, it would become a sharp weapon in her hand. She easily found the realm wind insects that were hiding in the stone pillars or walls to release the realm wind skill and killed them. Ding! When he killed the sixth realm wind insect, Zhouwen heard a familiar sound as a crystal dropped. When Zhouwen saw the crystal, he was delighted. The crystal resembled an ant's egg and was the size of a chicken's egg. There was a projection of the realm wind insect inside. It was clearly a primordial energy skill crystal with the name Realm Wind Insect Crystal. I wonder what the primordial energy skill of the Realm Wind Insect is? Could it be Realm Wind? Zhouwen thought to himself as he got the blood-colored avatar to pick up the Realm Wind Insect Crystal. He wanted to see what kind of skill he could obtain. However, the system suddenly gave a notification. Requires 21 strength and 9 wind stats to absorb the Realm Wind Insect Crystal. Insufficient wind stats. Unable to refine and absorb. It actually needs the wind stat? Zhouwen was somewhat depressed. He could understand the wind stat. It was likely similar to the poison stat points he had previously absorbed. However, epic primordial energy skills seemed to have all sorts of requirements. It wasn't like the past where he could practice them as long as he was willing. Zhouwen had killed quite a number of Wangliang, but only one poison crystal dropped. The other crystals that dropped were all 4 basic stats. From this, it could be seen that the drop rate of special stat crystals wasn't high. The wind stat crystal was probably about the same. It wasn't easy for it to drop. Zhouwen was somewhat vexed as he held the Realm Wind Insect Crystal. It might be refreshed if he threw it on the ground, and he couldn't absorb it even if he held it in his hand. There was no inventory in-game. If only there was a chaos bead in the game. That was all Zhouwen could think of. It was completely useless. He held the Realm Wind Insect Crystal in his hand and circled the ruins with Banana Fairy, killing all the Realm Wind insects he could find. Indeed, as Zhouwen had expected, a few basic stat crystals dropped, but not a single wind stat crystal dropped. The drop rate was rather low. However, this was also related to the rarity of the realmwind insect. Zhou Wen and Banana Fairy had only found 17 realmwind insects after touring the entire ruin. They couldn't find any more. Unless Zhou Wen refreshed the dungeon, there would be no more realmwind insects to kill. However, once the dungeon respawned, the realmwind insect crystal in the blood-colored avatar's hand would also disappear. The drop rate was similarly very low, making Zhou Wen reluctant to waste it. It's too wasteful to just grind it like this. I'll make a trip to the ruins in real life and kill the realmwind insects in real life to see if they can drop a wind stat crystal. Zhou Wen made up his mind to kill the realmwind insects in real life. With Banana Fairy around, he wouldn't be in any danger as long as he didn't enter the underground passageway. He could take the opportunity to see if Ensheng and company were still in the ruins. If they hadn't entered the underground passageway, he could rendezvous with them. However, Zhou Wen felt that they had already entered the underground passageway. There was a high chance that he would still have to enter the underground passageway. After packing his things, Zhou Wen left the tent. He planned on telling Lu Yunxian and company to stay behind while he made a trip to the ruins. Zhao Xian and company were chatting when they saw Zhou Wen walk over. Zhao Xian casually said, "Your injuries are so serious. Why aren't you resting in the tent? Just shout if there's anything." "My injuries are better. It's not that serious. I want to take a look inside the ruins. You guys stay here. If Ensheng returns, tell him not to enter the ruins again. Just wait for me here." With that said, Zhou Wen turned around and left. Zhao Xian and company widened their eyes. Previously, Lu Yunxian had said that Zhou Wen wouldn't go to the ruins. They didn't believe it, but now they had no choice but to believe it. "Zhou Wen, there's a strange spatial wind in the ruins. It's useless for you to go. You'll only be sending yourself to your death," Zhao Xian said. "I've already thought of a way to deal with the spatial wind. You don't have to worry about me." Zhou Wen was only there to inform them. He didn't plan on letting them go with him, so he didn't stay. With that said, he turned and left. "Young Master One, I'll go with you." Lu Yunxian was already prepared as he chased after him out of the tent. Zhao Xian and company looked at each other. Finally, Zhao Xian said, "Let's go outside the ruins to take a look. If they die in the ruins, we can think of a way to collect their corpses. It would be too sad if Adjutant and doesn't even see their corpses when he returns." "Brother Zhao, do you think Zhou Wen has really thought of a way to crack the spatial wind?" another person asked. "How is that possible? Even Adjutant and can't crack that thing. Zhou Wen doesn't cultivate a wind elemental primordial energy art, and he's only at the legendary stage. What can he use to crack it?" Zhao Xian thought nothing of it. "What if Zhou Wen cracks it? Should we follow him in?" the person asked again. "It's pointless. Why think so much? Let's go take a look first." As Zhao Xian spoke, he packed up his raincoat and the three of them left the tent. When they arrived at the ruins, Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian had already entered. Thankfully, the blood rain inside the ruins was much lighter. Their vision was much clearer, allowing them to see their figures. "Zhou Wen, Commander Lu, we'll be here to receive you. Shout if you need anything." Zhao Xian didn't dare step into the ruins as he shouted at Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian from outside. Zhou Wen ignored him. He tried persuading Lu Yunxian, but Lu Yunxian refused to return. All he could do was let him follow them into the ruins. "I wonder if those realmwind insects are in the same positions as in-game?" Zhou Wen looked at a stone pillar. If the positions were the same, he could strike first and directly kill the realmwind insects. There was no need to wait for them to release the realmwind. With this in mind, Zhou Wen gripped the hilt of his bamboo blade tightly and slowly approached the stone pillar. Regardless of whether they were in the same position as in-game, there was no harm in trying. Chapter 281. When Lu Yunxian saw Zhou Wen grab the hilt of his saber, he imagined that Zhou Wen had discovered an enemy. He hurriedly circulated his primordial energy art and looked around warily. Zhao Xian and company, who were outside, also turned nervous. Although Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian wanted to enter, it had nothing to do with them if they died. However, in such a strange place, no one wanted to see their own kind beheaded in front of them. Suddenly, Zhou Wen's figure vanished as he appeared in front of a broken stone pillar like a ghost. He held the saber with both hands and slashed at the stone pillar in front of him. A sanguine halo slashed out from the saber. Crack! The stone pillar was split into two by Zhou Wen's saber. The cleft was as smooth as a mirror, but blood splattered out of the cut. It left Lu Yunxian and the three people outside stunned. Young Master One, is this the source of the strange spatial wind in the ruins? Lu Yunxian walked over and asked as he looked at the realm wind insect's corpse in the stone pillar. As Zhou Wen rummaged through the realm wind insect's corpse, he nodded. That's right. There should be more than one. Don't stray too far from me in case something happens. Unfortunately, the realm wind insect didn't produce a crystal, nor did it have a companion egg. Zhou Wen continued walking forward with Lu Yunxian, but Zhao Xian and company had odd expressions. Brother Zhao, that punk Zhou Wen is indeed capable. Even Adjutant and couldn't find the dimensional creature in the ruins, but he managed to find it. From the looks of it, he's really capable. Should we enter with him? One of them said to Zhao Xian. What for? Are we sending ourselves to our deaths? He can find one, but who knows how many more are inside. If we make a mistake, we will still die inside. Adjutant and told us to guard this place, so let's wait here for them to return. Why risk our lives? As Zhao Xian spoke, he walked back. However, Zhou Wen's strike kept replaying in his mind. He couldn't help but mutter softly, that punk sure is odd. Zhou Wen never expected the realm wind insect's location in reality to be identical to in-game. He stormed his way over and didn't give the realm wind a chance to use it. He killed them directly in the stone cave. Lu Yunxian followed Zhou Wen and watched as Zhou Wen killed as though he was a god who could foresee the future. His bamboo blade would definitely be stained with blood as it killed the strange insects hidden in the rock. The way he looked at Zhou Wen became increasingly odd. He had also observed carefully, but he couldn't see anything abnormal, much less know where the realm wind insects were hidden. However, Zhou Wen's saber strike was firm and without any hesitation, killing the realm wind insects hidden in the rocks. The ruins that were originally enveloped in horror seemed to have become less terrifying because of the youth in front of him. In Lu Yunxian's eyes, Zhou Wen's entire being seemed to emit light and heat, illuminating the terrifying land. This feeling. It's familiar. I've it before. He couldn't help but recall of an Zhou Tian. Tianzhua and had Yunxian of the one. Zhou Wen. With Zhou Wen and one. Li Li was Tian. One and Yunxian was. One was Chen Emperor was. One of one was do with. Back then, and Tianzhua wasn't as convincing as he was now. Even many people in the family paid lip service to the young overseer. A new dimensional zone had appeared in the south district of Luoyang, causing a large number of citizens to suffer. And Tianzhua wanted to send troops to suppress the dimensional zone in the south district, but due to the family's obstruction, he could only mobilize a small portion of the army. And Tianzhua had no choice but to personally lead the army into the dimensional zone. Back then, Lu Yunxian wasn't a battalion commander, but a mere squad leader. A total of 4 squads had followed in Tianzhua into the dangerous dimensional zone and encountered many strange dimensional creatures. However, the reinforcements that should have arrived on time didn't arrive. Back then, many soldiers had already fallen into despair, believing that they would definitely die in battle. Even Lu Yunxian had the same thoughts. However, it was that young man who held a revolver in one hand and a broadsword in the other. He had led them through the dimensional zone and carved out a bloody path from the dimensional beast horde, leading them out. Back then, Tianzhua was just like the youth in front of them, emitting light and heat like the sun. After that battle, many of the soldiers and low-ranking officers who had survived like Lu Yunxian had now become the mainstays of the Sunset Army. They were also loyal to Tianzhua. The first thing Tianzhua did when he returned to Luoyang was to rush into the residence of the An family's elder, An Huaishan, who had disobeyed military orders. He personally beheaded all the men in the An family above the age of 16. That night, the An family's blood flowed like a river. The man who had once been like the sun was covered in blood in his military uniform. He was like a devil that no one dared to approach. Only a handsome youth followed behind him with a cloth bag on his back. He followed Tianzhua all the way to the cemetery of martyrs. As they walked, the blood in the cloth bag dripped all the way. When they arrived in front of the tombs of the warriors who had died in the dimensional zone, the handsome youth opened the cloth bag. Bloody heads rolled out, scaring the people who were watching. An Huaishan's entire family, from An Huaishan to his 16-year-old grandson, all the men with military records, had their heads hung in front of the tombs as a tribute to the soldiers who had died. Ever since then, Tianzhua had taken over the An family's authority, and the Sunset Army was gradually branded with Tianzhua. It's been so many years. I've never seen such a person again. Lu Yunxian looked at Zhou Wen, who was walking in front of him, with a complicated expression. Perhaps it was because of the environment they grew up in, but this youth and Tianzhua had completely different personalities. However, when they wanted to do the same thing, they were surprisingly similar. It was as if they could accomplish whatever they wanted to do. Their bodies seemed to emit a dazzling radiance that made people involuntarily look at them. Crack! Zhou Wen slashed open the stone pillar and a realm-wind insect's body was sliced open. A diamond-shaped crystal rolled out from its body. Zhou Wen was delighted when he saw the crystal. It was transparent and flawless, and there seemed to be wind flowing inside. It was obvious that it was different from ordinary crystals. Could this be a windstat crystal? Zhou Wen hurriedly picked up the crystal and secretly took a picture of it with his phone. Wind Crystal 11. The information displayed on his phone made Zhou Wen overjoyed. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief. If there were only 17 realm wind insects in real life, he would have already killed 13. If a windstat crystal didn't drop, he would probably have to give up on the realm wind insect crystal in-game. Without any hesitation, he refined and absorbed the wind crystal. He felt a faint wind inject into his body, and his stats had an additional wind stat. It was 11. After meeting the requirement to absorb the realm wind insect crystal, Zhou Wen chose to absorb it in-game. The crystal immediately transformed into transparent wind that seeped into the blood-colored avatar's body, forming a new primordial energy path and circulation in the blood-colored avatar's body. Chapter 282. Absorbed Realm Wind Insect Crystal. Attained Wind Elemental Primordial Energy Skill, Returning Wind. Isn't it Realm Wind? Zhou Wen was somewhat disappointed. He had already witnessed the power of Realm Wind. He had originally hoped that it would be Realm Wind, but to his surprise, it wasn't. He carefully looked at Returning Wind's information and saw that it was a Wind Elemental Passive Primordial Energy Skill. It couldn't be used actively and could only be used when certain conditions were met. Returning Wind requires a Saber Aura-type Primordial Energy Skill to trigger, producing a Returning Wind effect. Zhou Wen didn't know what the Returning Wind effect meant, but he did know a Saber Aura-type Primordial Energy Skill. It was the Astral Slash Blade that he had obtained from the mutated demonized general. However, Zhou Wen had combined the three skills into one, fusing them into the demonic astral wheel. Now, Zhou Wen didn't know if it was still considered a Saber Aura-type Primordial Energy Skill. Since I've already learned it, I'll give it a try. Zhou Wen continued walking forward and arrived at the hiding spot of a Realmwind insect. As he drew his saber, he used the demonic astral wheel primordial energy skill. A sanguine beam slashed out from the bamboo blade, forming a ring of sanguine light. Like a saw blade, it sliced the stone pillar into two, killing the realm-wind insect inside. Zhou sheathed his saber, and was about to walk over to check the realm-wind insect's corpse to see if there were any crystals inside when he saw a sanguine beam flash. The astral wheel that Zhou had previously slashed out flew back. Thankfully, Zhou reacted quickly enough to dodge. Otherwise, he would have been struck by his own primordial energy skill. Crack! The demonic astral wheel slashed at the stone wall behind Zhou, splitting it into two before vanishing. This returning wind is rather interesting. Zhou was somewhat surprised. Typical primordial energy skills couldn't be controlled after being slashed out. However, returning wind allowed the slashed demonic astral wheel to have the possibility of being controlled. Young Master Wen's saber aura is very strange. It seems to be somewhat similar to the legendary spiraling saber aura, but it's not quite the same. The spiraling saber aura wins with technique. The saber aura follows an arc, making it difficult to predict, but it lacks destructive power. Young Master Wen, your saber beam is extremely domineering, but it's also extremely strange. It's impossible to guard against it. If I hadn't seen this saber strike before, I would never have imagined that the saber beam could return. There's a high chance that I would be severely injured or even die, Lu Yunxian said. I haven't been learning for long, so I haven't mastered it yet. Sorry for the embarrassment, Zhou said. Then you really have to practice it properly. This kind of technique will often have miraculous effects on the battlefield. However, Lu Yunxian said seriously, a battle on the battlefield is all about a one-hit kill. Everyone is fighting with all their might, but if a saber were to suddenly slash at them from the back, I'm afraid not many people can dodge it. Alright. Zhou nodded. We'll talk about it in the future. It's more important to find Sheng and company now. Zhou was rather familiar with the ruins' interior. Previously, he had deliberately taken a detour to kill the realm-wind insect. Now that he had obtained the wind crystal he wanted and absorbed it, he didn't take any detours. He headed for the entrance of the underground tunnel. Young Master Wen, could that be the underground entrance that Lu Qingji, no, Mei mentioned? Lu Yunxian said as he pointed at a dilapidated building. The building was squarish like a stone box. Only one side was empty. From the empty side, one could see a stone staircase that led underground. On both sides of the stone steps, one could see two strange stone statues. The one on the left was like a tiger, but it had wings on its back. The one on the right was like a bird, but it had two bull-like horns on its head. It should be here. Zhou obviously knew that this was the entrance to the underground tunnel. He had come here many times in-game, but he had never entered. Not seeing Sheng and company here left Zhou, who had expected it, somewhat disappointed. In that case, he could only enter the tunnel to find them. I wonder if this thing can replace the effects of stone artifacts? Zhou glanced at the stone egg in the chaos space, and felt somewhat depressed. Young Master Wen, I'll go in and take a look first, Lu Yunxian said. Don't go in yet. It's dangerous here. It doesn't matter if we get trapped, but if we lose the stone artifact it won't be worth it, Zhou said. Then what should we do? Lu Yunxian asked. Let's wait a day or two. If Sheng hasn't come out by then, we'll go in. Zhou needed time to understand the situation in the underground tunnel. Otherwise, he would be sending himself to his death. After all, he was only at the legendary stage. His cultivation level wasn't strong enough, so he couldn't forcefully barge in like Sheng and Ouyanglan. If an accident happened, he might not be able to deal with it due to his lack of strength. Lu Yunxian followed Zhou lead. Since Zhou had said so, he had no objections. Stay here and wait for Sheng and company to come out. I'll clean up the worms in the ruins to prevent them from encountering trouble after they come out. As Zhou spoke, he was about to leave when he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the underground tunnel. Zhou listened attentively. The sound resembled the sound of a train running on the tracks. Clang, clang. It was very rhythmic, as though there was a train running underground. Furthermore, the sound was getting louder and louder. Looking at the pitch-black stone steps, it was as though a train would rush out at any moment. It's a pity that Truth Listener is evolving. Otherwise, with its ability, it would be able to figure out what's going on inside. Zhou was already beginning to miss Truth Listener's ability. It was just too versatile and could solve many problems. If I remember correctly, there wasn't a railway here in the past. There shouldn't be a train here. Could it be that there's something similar to a train in myths and legends? Lu Yunxian listened for a while, and also felt that the sound resembled a train. Zhou shook his head in silence. In this era, he wouldn't find it unbelievable that a spaceship would come out from underground. The two of them stared warily at the stone step. It was pitch black inside, like the huge mouth of a monster from hell. They couldn't see anything, but they could hear the clanging sounds getting louder and louder. It was as though a train was about to come out. Zhou and Lu Yunxian looked at each other and took a step back. They stood on both sides of the stone passageway. If a train really rushed out, it wouldn't directly hit them. As the sound got closer, Zhou felt that a train was about to rush out. In the darkness, Zhou seemed to see a train's headlights flickering. There's really a train down there? Lu Yunxian also saw the light and couldn't help but say in surprise. I don't know if it's a train, but that thing is about to come out. Be careful. Zhou summoned Dr. Darkness and made him possess him in his soul form. Then, he used Dr. Darkness's light of penetration to look into the dark tunnel. Chapter 283. Zhouwen's eyes were like two miniature searchlights, shooting out two beams that illuminated the dark underground tunnel. Although the main effect of this skill was X-ray vision, it wasn't difficult to see in the dark. However, the illumination distance was a little short, and the light of penetration couldn't reach too far. The sound that resembled a train in the darkness wasn't far from the exit of the tunnel. When Zhou took a look, his expression immediately turned odd. There was really a vehicle in the dark tunnel. It was coming up, but it wasn't a train. Instead, it was a strange vehicle made of stone and wood. The style of the carriage was very old. The carriage had a square back, and it looked like a chariot pulled by horses in ancient times. However, this carriage didn't have any horses or other creatures pulling it. At the very front of the carriage was a humanoid puppet. The puppet stood on the pedals of the carriage, holding a rocking arm with both hands. Its body moved up and down, pushing the rocking wheel rhythmically. As the rocker spun, the strange vehicle made of stone and wood moved up the stone step. The stone wheels collided with the edge of the stone steps, producing clanging sounds. It moved at a slow speed. Beside the puppet was a wooden pole with a stone lamp hanging on it. The light that Zhou and Lu Yunxian had seen was emitted from the stone lamp. Apart from the puppet, there were no other creatures in the vehicle. It was as though the puppet was driving the strange vehicle. The puppet was also strange. It looked like a human, but its face was flat. There were no facial features carved on it, making it look very strange. Zhou had only taken a few looks when the strange wooden carriage had already reached the entrance of the tunnel. Then, it slowly came to a stop. Zhou and Lu Yunxian sized up the strange vehicle warily. However, after the strange vehicle left the stone tunnel, it stopped moving. The puppet on it seemed to have run out of clockwork. It stopped there, maintaining the rocker arm motionless. Lu Yunxian leaped up, but he didn't approach the vehicle. He only wanted to jump up to see what was inside. Lu Ning. After Lu Yunxian rose to a certain height, he looked into the carriage and shouted. Zhou also flew up and looked into the truck bed. He saw that there was only a woman lying inside. She looked like she had fainted. Apart from that, there was nothing else. The truck bed was empty. Zhou might know the woman. She was Lu Ning, who had come with Sheng. Zhou had a deep impression of her, especially her snow fox. It had powerful ice elemental powers that left Zhou envious. I'll go see if she's dead, Lu Yunxian said as he prepared to jump onto the strange vehicle. Don't go yet. Zhou had a nagging feeling that the strange car was somewhat odd. He stopped Lu Yunxian and used the demonic astral wheel to suck in the car. Lu Ning, who was unconscious in the back of the truck, was immediately sucked out and flew towards Zhou Wen's palm. Having learned his lesson from Lu Qingji, Zhou Wen was much more vigilant. He didn't touch Lu Ning's body and instead retracted his strength, causing Lu Ning's body to fall to the ground. He didn't know if she was dead or not. She didn't react at all when she fell to the ground. She just lay there motionlessly. Zhou Wen first used the transparent light to look at Lu Ning and realized that her heart was still beating. Her bodily functions seemed normal. However, what was strange was that there were many snake-like worms squirming along her blood vessels. It looked abnormally terrifying. Zhou Wen roughly knew that the reason Lu Ning was unconscious was likely due to the worms in her blood vessels. The worms looked like snakes, but their bodies were extremely slender like strands of hair. They squirmed in her blood vessels and even burrowed into her heart and other organs. She's still alive. There doesn't seem to be any injuries on her body. Her heart is also beating, but for some reason she's unconscious, Lu Yunxian said as he checked Lu Ning's body. Her raincoat is already torn. It can't withstand the blood rain here. It's not convenient to treat her here either. Bring her back to the tent and ask her what happened after waking her up. Seeing that the hair-like worms showed no signs of burrowing out, Zhou Wen got Lu Yunxian to wrap Lu Ning in the raincloth he had brought and carry her out of the ruins. Zhao Xian and company were alarmed when they saw that Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian had come out unscathed and had even brought someone back. Lu Ning. What happened to her? Zhao Xian was alarmed when he saw Lu Ning. He knew how powerful Lu Ning was. Her ice elemental primordial energy art was considered top-notch at the epic stage. With the help of many excellent grade companion beasts, there weren't many people at the epic stage who could defeat Lu Ning. Now that Lu Ning had been brought back by Zhou Wen and company in an unconscious state, it meant that the situation down there was probably very bad. What happened? How are Adjutant An and the rest? Zhao Xian asked. I don't know. When we arrived at the entrance of the underground tunnel, we happened to see her come out. Now we can only wake her up before we know what happened down there, Zhou Wen said. Let me try. I have a rejuvenation vine companion beast. It has pretty good healing abilities, Zhao Xian said as he summoned a plant-type companion beast. It was a green vine that wrapped around Lu Ning's body like a snake. The sprouts climbed onto Lu Ning's face and reached into her nostrils, mouth and ears, secreting a liquid that resembled clear water. The liquid had pretty good healing effects. Even a heavily injured person would typically be able to wake up temporarily. However, Zhao Xian kept urging the rejuvenation vine to secrete the liquid, but he failed to wake Lu Ning up. Strange. If it's just an injury, even if it's a brain injury, the rejuvenation juice would still be effective. Why isn't she reacting at all? Could she have been hit by a primordial energy skill like hypnosis? Zhao Xian wore a puzzled look. The others didn't have any healing abilities either. They looked at each other, unable to come up with a good solution. Don't waste your companion beast's energy. Let it rest for a while. It'll still be useful later, Zhou Wen said to Zhao Xian. Young Master One, do you have a solution? At some point in time, Zhao Xian had changed the way he addressed Lu Yunxian. Let's give it a try. It's a desperate attempt, Zhou Wen said as he flipped his wrist. As Zhou Wen spoke, he flipped his wrist and a strange force condensed in his hand, turning into a metal syringe. Walking to Lu Ning's side, Zhou Wen stared at her like a searchlight. At the same time, he stabbed the syringe into Lu Ning's arm. He had learned some knowledge about injecting drugs in school, but it was the most basic knowledge. Furthermore, it was only in theory and had never been put into practice. Zhou was only giving it a try to see if Dr. Darkness's poison could kill the strange worms in Lu Ning's body. Chapter 284. Zhou advancement was very slow because he didn't know how much venom was needed to kill the strange worms. If the dosage was too high, it might poison Lu Ning to death. He couldn't be too rough. Thankfully, Zhou had personally experienced the toxicity in-game and knew the approximate dosage needed to be fatal. Although it was his own standard, Lu Ning was at the epic stage, so her body shouldn't be too weak. As the venom entered Lu Ning's body bit by bit, Zhou carefully observed the reactions in her body to see if the strange worms would react to the venom. If they struggled too much, they might damage Lu Ning's body. When that happened, Lu Ning's body would be riddled with holes. It would be useless even if the worms were poisoned to death. However, at Lu Ning's level, he could only take the risk. If he didn't get rid of the worms, she would die sooner or later. Thankfully, the worrisome situation didn't happen. After the venom was injected into Lu Ning's body, her body convulsed violently due to the pain. However, this didn't wake her up. Zhao Xin and company looked at Lu Ning worriedly, but Zhou continued pushing the venom with a deadpan expression. However, he carefully controlled the amount of venom. It looked like Lu Ning was in pain, but it was only the effects of the venom on her body. It wasn't the work of the strange worms. The venom flowed along her blood and fused with it, flowing throughout her body. It was very painful, but it was very effective. The strange worms that were attached to her blood vessels quickly stopped squirming after absorbing the blood or simply being corroded by the venom. Before long, the worms in Lu Ning's body were killed, but this didn't ease Zhou brows. This was because after the worms died, their corpses remained in Lu Ning's body. This would block her blood vessels, causing her body to suffer from problems. If he couldn't remove the blood threadworms, Lu Ning might not be able to escape death. It could be seen from her unconscious state that her body hadn't fully recovered. However, to extract the blood threadworms from so many tiny blood vessels, and there are so many organs with blood threadworms in them, even the best doctor in the world won't be able to cut open the blood vessels and remove the worms, right? As though sensing Zhou thoughts, Dr. Darkness transmitted a strong thought, as though telling Zhou that he could do it. This left Zhou slightly alarmed. Although every companion beast had its own will, most companion beasts had muddled consciousnesses. Up to now, Zhou only had 4 companion beasts that could clearly express their consciousness: Truth Listener, Banana Fairy, Ghost Bride, and Dr. Darkness. Dr. Darkness was born on the Dead Man Tree. Perhaps he's indeed extraordinary. Zhou was somewhat worried. If Dr. Darkness really gained complete consciousness in the future, would he turn back into that perverted doctor? Summoning Dr. Darkness, he walked to Lu Ning and held a scalpel with his slender fingers. Zhao Xin and company looked at Dr. Darkness, who was holding the scalpel like a puppet. They knew that it was Zhou companion beast, but they didn't know why Zhou had summoned it. A companion beast performing surgery on a human? They had never even dreamed of such a thing. Indeed, many companion beasts had powerful healing abilities and could even revive the dead, but that was a manifestation of dimensional powers. As for surgery, it was a skill that was completely different from pure strength. In the next second, Dr. Darkness completely subverted their understanding of companion beasts. The scalpel in Dr. Darkness's hand flashed as he sliced through almost all the blood vessels on Lu Ning's body. Then, a needle appeared in his hand as he pushed the poison into Lu Ning's blood vessels. The entire process was so smooth that it made one's hair stand on end. If it wasn't for the lack of scalpels and various equipment, they would even feel like they were watching the most outstanding doctor perform surgery. As the poison was pushed in, Lu Ning's body trembled violently once again. Then, blood slowly flowed out from the cut blood vessels. At the same time, the strange hair-like worms flowed out. What the hell is this? Zhao Xin and company jumped in fright when they saw the strange worms. They couldn't help but cry out. After Dr. Darkness was done, he returned to Zhou Wen's side. Zhou Wen immediately felt depressed as he thought, "Don't tell me you're done just like that? If she continues to bleed like this, even though the worms will come out, Lu Ning will still die if she loses too much blood. I want her alive," Zhou Wen said to Dr. Darkness. Dr. Darkness didn't have the ability to answer. All he did was send a thought to Zhou Wen, as though saying that he was only in charge of extracting the strange worms. It's no wonder he's called Dr. Darkness even after becoming a companion beast. Zhou Wen had no choice but to say to Zhao Xian, "Use your ivy to help Lu Ning. Don't let her die from excessive blood loss." When Zhao Xian heard that, he hurriedly summoned the ivy and got it to secrete rejuvenation juice to nourish Lu Ning's injured body. The ivy's ability was indeed not bad. Even when the strange worms flowed out of her wounds, Lu Ning didn't die from excessive blood loss. Instead, she woke up. "All right, let's stop the bleeding." Zhou Wen used Dr. Darkness's eyes of penetration to stare at her. Seeing that all the strange worms had flowed out, he immediately got Zhao Xian and company to stop Lu Ning's bleeding. The wounds that Dr. Darkness had cut were very small, and most of them were veins. In the beginning, blood kept flowing out due to the effects of the poison, but as the effects of the poison weakened, the blood basically stopped flowing after all the strange worms flowed out. Zhou Wen couldn't help but marvel at Dr. Darkness's control over the poison. "Lu Ning, how are you feeling? Can you speak?" Zhou Wen asked Lu Ning when he saw her wake up and open her eyes. Lu Ning's eyes lost focus in the beginning, but after a while, she gradually recovered. When she saw Zhou Wen and company clearly, she wore a puzzled look. She struggled to sit up and asked in a hoarse voice, "Why am I here?" "It was young Master Wen who saved you. You might not know this, but you were unconscious when you returned. It was young Master Wen's companion beast that unleashed its might and released the strange worms from your body." As Zhao Xian spoke, he looked at the strange worms that were tangled together like strands of hair on the ground and couldn't help but shiver. Just the thought of so many strange worms burrowing into one's body left one shuddering. When Lu Ning saw the strange worms, her expression changed as though she had finally regained consciousness. Following that, she revealed a look of anger. "Those bastards, Lord Alcohol. They weren't here to help Adjutant and save anyone. After we arrived at the underground battlefield, they suddenly attacked and knocked Adjutant and me down." Chapter 285. Zhou Wen and company were alarmed when they heard that. Lu Yunxian hurriedly asked, "Lu Ning, speak clearly. What happened?" Lu Ning recounted what had happened. They followed the markings left behind by Ouyang Lan and found the entrance to the underground tunnel. And Xing led them in. However, not long after they entered, the entrance to the tunnel suddenly closed. Then, large amounts of black liquid flowed out from the cracks in the surrounding rock. When they took a closer look, they realized that it wasn't a liquid at all. Instead, it was a kind of worm that looked like a strand of hair. There were so many of those worms that they couldn't be counted. They were like a tide. As long as one was touched by the worms, they would drill into the body through the pores and quickly make the person unconscious. If there were too many worms drilling into the body, it would be fatal. Since the tunnel couldn't be opened, and they had to rescue Ouyang Lan, and Xing could only order them to retreat deep underground. After fleeing for a long time, they finally escaped the worm horde and found a strange underground palace. However, just as Xing gave the order to explore the palace, Lord Alcohol and company suddenly launched a sneak attack on Xing and Lu Ning. Xing was caught off guard and was sent flying into an underground vault filled with worms. Although Lu Ning resisted a few times, she was outnumbered and was sent flying as well. Lu Ning only remembered that she fell into the worm horde and fainted. She thought that she was doomed, but she never expected to see Zhou Wen and company when she opened her eyes. Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian frowned when they heard that. "Don't you know that you came out lying on a strange car?" "What car?" Lu Ning frowned. Seeing that Lu Ning really didn't know, Zhou Wen and Lu Yunxian were puzzled. From what Lu Ning said, it was naturally impossible for Lord Alcohol and company to be merciful and save her. There was something odd about this matter. Lu Ning, if you can still hold on, can you draw a map of the places you passed and the things you encountered? Zhou Wen said to Lu Ning. Sure, but we were constantly fleeing back then. I can only remember the general direction. I definitely can't remember the entire route, but I do remember some special landmarks. Lu Ning took out a pen and paper and wrote some scattered information for Zhou Wen. Have a good rest. We'll think of a way to save them. Zhou Wen took the information and prepared to return to his game. He followed Lu Ning's route. Lu Ning shook her head and didn't say a word. They only had so few people left, so how could they enter to save Anxing? Furthermore, Anxing had already fallen into the sea of worms. The chances of him surviving were slim. However, Zhou Wen didn't believe that someone like Anxing would die so easily. Furthermore, it was very likely that the former principal was inside. Regardless, he had to enter to take a look. After returning to his tent, Zhou Wen switched on the mysterious phone and entered the Zhuolu dungeon, arriving at the entrance of the underground tunnel. The strange car didn't exist in-game. After looking at the information Lu Ning had written, Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to enter the tunnel. The tunnel was dark and damp, and the stone steps were covered with moss. Both sides of the tunnel were half man-made stone walls. It could be seen that this was originally an underground cave, but it was slightly man-made. Not long after he entered the tunnel, he heard a bang. He saw that the tunnel entrance was blocked by a stone door, and the tunnel was immediately plunged into darkness. Zhou Wen wasn't used to this darkness. Without Truth Listener's ability, his pure vision became very weak. He couldn't see in the darkness. Thankfully, Zhou Wen still had Dr. Darkness. He got Dr. Darkness to attach himself to him and activated Light of Penetration. Zhou Wen's eyes immediately shot out a beam of light, allowing him to see clearly within 10 meters. With this look, Zhou Wen felt his scalp tingle. He saw many cracks on the stone wall, and countless hair-threaded worms were surging out. Just as Lu Ning had said, they looked like black liquid. Zhou Wen summoned the banana fan and fanned at the surrounding hair-threaded worms. Wherever the wind passed, the worms were immediately blown away and slammed into the mountain wall, turning into shattered ice and dying. Killed legendary creature, blood-threaded worm. Killed legendary creature, blood-threaded worm. Killed legendary creature, blood-threaded worm. With this fanning, the system's notification flooded his screen. Only at the legendary stage? Zhou Wen was somewhat disappointed. He never expected such strange worms to only be at the legendary stage. However, they could actually burrow into the bodies of epic experts and knock them unconscious. This was rather impressive. From the looks of it, the level suppression isn't absolute. The abilities of these blood-threaded worms are rather special, and there are so many of them. It's no wonder even epic experts have to retreat. When Zhou Wen saw the tidal wave of blood-threaded worms surge over again, he didn't waste his primordial energy and ran deep into the underground tunnel. Lu Ning slept for more than 10 hours and used some primordial energy crystals. When she woke up again, she looked much better. Lu Yunxian suddenly asked Lu Ning when he saw her sit down, "Lu Ning, if you were to enter the underground tunnel again, would you still dare to do it? Adjutant An is already dead. What's the point of us entering again?" Lu Ning sighed and said, "And now that I think about it, after we entered the tunnel, we were fleeing for our lives. I didn't realize it back then, but now that I think about it carefully, it seems like we were led away by Lord Alcohol and the others." Lord Alcohol and the others already know about the underground world. They didn't come here to save Madame Lan, so they must have a motive. No matter what their motive is, I don't believe that Adjutant An will die so easily. Furthermore, there's still young Master One. He will definitely enter to reinforce Adjutant An. However, we don't know much about the situation inside. If possible, I hope you can enter the underground tunnel with us again, Lu Yunxian said as he looked at Lu Ning. Lu Yunxian looked at Lu Ning and said, there were some things that Zhou could choose not to do, but he had to make plans early. Young Master One? Are you talking about Zhou? I know he has great potential, but he's only at the legendary stage. In such a terrifying place, even you and I can't protect ourselves. What can he do? Lu Ning said. Lu Yunxian didn't say anything else as he looked at Lu Ning and asked, then, are you willing to enter the underground tunnel again? Just treat it as doing it for adjutant. And Lu Ning opened her mouth and was about to say something when she suddenly heard a clanging sound coming from the ruins. It sounded like a bell being struck, but it wasn't the sound of metal clashing. It was more like the sound of rocks hitting each other. Zhou also heard the sound and immediately thought of the strange car. Furthermore, from the direction of the sound, it seemed to be coming from the entrance of the underground tunnel. Chapter 286. When Zhou came out, Lu Yunxian and company had already walked out of the tent and were looking in the direction of the ruins. Young Master One, should we go take a look? Lu Yunxian asked Zhou. Clearly, he had determined that the strange car was producing the sound. Zhou nodded and said, it's good to go take a look. He was also very curious about the strange car. He hadn't seen the car in-game. Even after entering the underground tunnel, he still didn't see the strange car. Now, Zhou was very curious about where the strange car had come from. Had someone brought it in, or was it something from the underground tunnel? Lu Yunxian followed Zhou into the ruins. Lu Ning, who had yet to recover from her injuries, hesitated for a moment before following them into the ruins. How did you resolve the wind of space? Lu Ning rode a giant snow fox and followed behind Zhou and company. She didn't see Zhou and Lu Yunxian use any means to interfere with the wind of space, nor did she see it appear. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. When she entered with Lord Alcohol and company, they had sacrificed quite a number of companion beasts to find a way to interfere with the wind of space. However, they had only found a way to interfere with it. It didn't completely resolve the problem. The wind of space would still appear. Young Master One has already killed the dimensional creature that used the wind of space. There shouldn't be any more wind of space in the near future, Lu Yunxian said. Lu Ning found it unbelievable when she heard that. She looked suspiciously at Zhou, finding it hard to imagine that this youth could do such an unbelievable thing. However, she had no choice but to believe it. She had been in the ruins for quite some time, but she hadn't encountered any wind of space. Zhou didn't say a word as he walked forward without a word. Soon, the three of them arrived in front of the underground tunnel again. Sure enough, the sound came from the strange car. The strange car that was originally parked in the passageway started to move again. The puppet standing on the front of the car was slowly moving the rocker arm. As the rocker arm swung, the strange car seemed to be winding up, making creaking sounds. Every time it swung, there would be a loud clang. The wheels of the strange car were slowly moving, but this time, it wasn't moving forward. Instead, it was retreating, as though it was returning to the ruins. Is this the strange car you were talking about? Did I come out by lying on it? Lu Ning asked as she looked at the strange vehicle that was slowly moving backward. Yes. Lu Yunxian said, you came out on it. You were the only one in the car. What kind of power is driving it? Lu Ning looked at the puppet on the strange carriage as if she wanted to know if it was a living thing. Young Master One and I have already checked it. The strange car is a dead object. There are no signs of living creatures on the puppet, but we didn't find anything like fuel. We don't know what principle it uses to push the strange car. We originally thought that it had exhausted its energy, but from the looks of it, that's not the case, Lu Yunxian said. Seeing the strange vehicle slowly reverse and about to enter the underground tunnel, Zhou looked at Lu Ning and asked, Lu Ning, you said that you were sent out by the strange vehicle while unconscious. Is it possible that you fell into the strange vehicle? I really don't know. I was struck down by Lord Alcohol and the others and fell into the blood threadworm horde. I quickly lost consciousness, so I really don't know what happened next. Lu Ning shook her head. Zhou looked at the strange vehicle that was about to retreat into the tunnel and frowned in thought. In-game, he had relied on the information Lu Ning had given him to venture deep into the underground world. However, as Lu Ning's information only had some landmarks and no detailed directions or path markings, Zhou could only find his way inside. However, the underground world was just too big. He had been wandering around for more than 10 hours, but he hadn't found the palace that Lu Ning had mentioned. Zhou didn't believe that Lu Ning was lying to him. This was because the paths inside were complicated, as though they had been artificially adjusted. After walking around for a long time, he realized that there were many times when he would return to a spot he had been to before. This spot wasn't fixed, but Zhou hadn't been able to walk out of it after walking for more than 10 hours in-game. I remember you saying that the underground chasm you fell into is in the palace, right? Zhou asked Lu Ning. That's right. Just as we entered the palace, we were ambushed by Lord Alcohol and the others and were knocked down, Lu Ning said. If we deduce that you fell into this strange vehicle and triggered a certain mechanism, causing the strange vehicle to bring you out, will I be able to return to the chasm you fell from if I were to sit in the strange vehicle? Zhou asked again. I really don't know, but it's too dangerous, Lu Ning said with a bitter smile. That's right. It's too dangerous, Lu Yunxian said. Although it's dangerous, this might be the best method. Lu Ning also said that she was led away by Lord Alcohol and the others. They know the way, but we don't. If we head down directly, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for us to find the palace. Lu Ning came out in the strange vehicle. Since she was able to come out unscathed, it means that the strange vehicle should be safe. If we enter in the strange vehicle, we might be able to reach the palace directly, Zhou said. Of course, there was something Zhou didn't say. He had played the game for more than 10 hours and had a rather good understanding of the underground world. He had ways to deal with the few-dimensional creatures inside. Now, the most troublesome thing was that he couldn't walk out of the maze-like path. The strange vehicle in front of him seemed to be a ray of hope. But that's just speculation. What if the strange vehicle takes us to a more dangerous place? Lu Yunxian said. We know nothing about it to begin with. Any place inside is dangerous for us. Zhou saw that half of the strange vehicle had entered the tunnel. Without any hesitation, he quickly walked over and jumped into the back of the vehicle. Then, he said to Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning, wait for me at the camp. I'll go in and take a look. Although Zhou could continue waiting and find a way out in-game, he didn't know how long it would take. Perhaps a day or two, 7 or 8 days, or even a month or two. He could wait, but he was afraid that the former principal and company wouldn't be able to wait any longer. Zhou wasn't worried that he would be trapped inside. With his understanding of the underground world, he knew that there were a few relatively safe places inside. Furthermore, he had enough daily necessities in the chaos space. Even if he was trapped for a year or so, his life wouldn't be in danger. Furthermore, he had his phone. After entering the tunnel, he got the blood-colored avatar to follow the strange vehicle's route. If an accident really happened, he could continue exploring the game as long as he found a safe place. Chapter 287. Young Master One, I'll go with you. Lu Yunxian rushed over in a few steps and jumped onto the strange vehicle. Lu Ning was still somewhat hesitant, but when she saw that the strange vehicle had already tilted and was about to slide into the underground tunnel, she gritted her teeth and got the snow fox to carry her towards the strange vehicle. At the instant the strange vehicle slid down, Lu Ning also jumped onto it. Creak, 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 the strange vehicle entered the tunnel, and like a roller coaster, it suddenly sped up and plunged deep underground. Zhou and company hurriedly grabbed onto the edge of the carriage and saw the scenery on both sides rapidly recede. The strange vehicle charged forward, shuttling through the crisscrossing caves, but it seemed to have a fixed trajectory. The puppet was crazily pushing its rocker arms, its body moving up and down as fast as a sewing machine at full speed. "Hold on tight. Don't get flung out." The strange vehicle's speed was just too fast. Furthermore, it didn't slow down when it made a turn. It made Zhou and company nearly fly out due to the centrifugal force. The three of them desperately grabbed onto the edge of the carriage as their bodies floated up. When the bend was over, they fell heavily into the carriage. However, the next bend came again. Zhou and Lu Yunxian were fine, but Lu Ning had yet to recover. Such a jolt made her expression turn ugly. Thankfully, Lu Ning wasn't a pampered person. As a freelance hunter, she had traversed the mountains and rivers of the Federation. She had hunted countless dimensional creatures and experienced countless battles of all sizes. She had encountered situations that were more difficult than this one, so this wasn't enough to make her panic. After a while, the slope of the cave slowed down, and the speed of the strange vehicle also slowed down a lot. The trio could finally sit stably in the back of the truck without being swung around. Lu Yunxian held on to the edge of the carriage and stood up. He looked out and saw stone walls and cave forks. Looking around, he soon realized that he couldn't even tell which direction he was in. "Young Master One, I can't even tell which direction I'm going." Lu Yunxian looked at Zhou helplessly. "Lu Ning, look around. Do you have any impression of this place?" Zhou asked Lu Ning. He knew the direction and even memorized the route of the strange vehicle. His focused talent allowed him to memorize everything under such harsh conditions. This was not something an ordinary person could do. However, Zhou didn't say it out loud and instead asked Lu Ning. Lu Ning's face was pale. She stood up with the help of the cart and looked around. After a while, she said, "There are no obvious landmarks here. It's just like any other cave. I don't know if I've been here before." Zhou thought about it and realized that it made sense. There was indeed nothing special about this place. There were stone walls and forks everywhere. Furthermore, the visibility wasn't good. With the help of the stone lamp in front of the car, he could only see about 10 meters away. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. They saw a starry sky appear in the darkness in front of them. In the pitch-black night sky, there were countless stars twinkling. Soon, Zhou and company realized that it wasn't a night sky, but a kind of ore that grew on the dark stone walls. It was similar to mica that shimmered with a mesmerizing light. The strange vehicle drove through the dark cave. Coupled with the scattered ores that resembled stars, it really felt like they were flying in the cosmos. It was so beautiful that it made one's soul feel a lot cleaner. Not good. When we came here previously, we passed by a similar place. Beside those strange glowing ores, there was a strange epic dimensional creature. It looked like a bat, but it didn't have sonic skills. However, its eyes could shoot out a beam of light. Once hit by that beam of light, one's body would melt like snow. It was extremely terrifying, Lu Ning said. "How many did you encounter back then?" Zhou asked as he looked at the top of the stone path. "We encountered a total of 3, but we didn't encounter them together. Otherwise, there might have been casualties," Lu Ning said. "Then you have to be mentally prepared now," Zhou said with an odd expression. Lu Ning and Lu Yunxian couldn't see clearly, but Zhou used Dr. Darkness's light of penetration to see clearly that there were white bat-like dimensional creatures hanging from the top of the cave. It was hard to say how many there were, but Zhou didn't know. Just as Lu Ning was about to ask if he was mentally prepared, she heard the sound of flapping wings. She saw a large swarm of white bats fly down from the top of the cave like a thick layer of white clouds. It was unknown how many bats there were. When Lu Ning saw this, her pale face turned even paler. There was no sign of blood. Just the bats that flew over numbered at least 100. This was only what she saw. She didn't know how many she couldn't see in the darkness. The first time they came, they had gone through a lot of trouble to kill a single white bat. Now that so many bats were rushing over, it could be said that the three of them were sentenced to death. Lu Yunxian and Zhou Wen were prepared to fight. Lu Yunxian didn't know how powerful the white bats were, but Zhou Wen knew that they were powerful. However, he wasn't afraid. He had already seen such white bats in-game. The light in the white bat's eyes was indeed powerful, but Zhou Wen had a way to deal with it. Seeing a large swarm of bats fly over, Zhou Wen held the banana fan and fanned it at the bat. An invisible grand wind swept out, immediately sending the flying white bats flying. Lu Ning summoned the snow fox and was about to fight to the death when she saw Zhou Wen standing in front of the car with a beautiful fan in his hand. He gently fanned the cloud-like white bats. The white bats that filled the sky seemed to have been swept away by an invisible force. They flew out and crashed into the stone ceiling. Their bodies were smashed into pieces and fell down one by one, smashing into the surrounding stone walls and stone steps with clanking sounds. Lu Ning looked at Zhou Wen in a daze, unable to believe her eyes. The might of the fan had killed nearly 100 white bats. It was just too shocking. It made her believe that the fan had come from a student at the legendary stage like Zhou Wen. She could accept it if the fan was done by a top epic expert, but Zhou Wen, a legendary, was able to produce such might. It made her feel like she was dreaming. However, Zhou Wen didn't find it strange. The banana fan was a top-notch epic to begin with. Furthermore, the white bats had their weaknesses. They were extremely fast, making it difficult for the typical epic to injure them. Coupled with the terrifying beam in their eyes, they were indeed very difficult to deal with. However, the white bat's weakness was their weak constitution. Among epic creatures, they were probably at the bottom. With a constitution of about 20 points, they weren't much stronger than a legendary. They couldn't withstand the Grand Wind, nor could they dodge the large-scale Grand Wind's attack. It could be said that the banana fan was their nemesis. Chapter 288. Zhou Wen couldn't help but feel regretful when he saw a large number of white bat corpses land on the tunnel behind him. There were even some crystals among them. The strange vehicle kept advancing. He didn't know what would happen if he left the strange vehicle, so it wasn't appropriate for him to pick up the crystals. All he could do was watch the strange vehicle gradually move away from them. A large number of bats were killed, but there were still a large number of white bats charging forward fearlessly. Looking at the white shadows flying above him made his scalp tingle. Zhou Wen had just used the Grand Wind and hadn't recovered his primordial energy when he saw a large number of white bats charge down. His expression changed slightly as he gripped his bamboo blade tightly and prepared to engage the white bats in close combat. Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning also summoned their companion beasts in preparation for battle. The carriage was too small, so they could only summon companion beasts in their companion form to transform into armor and weapons to assist them in battle. Seeing the large number of white bats rush down, Zhou Wen was about to draw his saber when he heard a buzzing sound. The white bats that filled the sky retreated. None of the white bats continued charging down as they circled the top of the cave. Zhou Wen and company were taken aback as they looked in the direction of the carriage. They saw that the puppet was holding a strange musical instrument at some point in time. The musical instrument was likely made of stone. It looked flat and had a few holes on it. It was extremely crude. But just as the white bat was about to rush down, the puppet placed the stone instrument in front of its face. Its face was just a piece of wood without any facial features. It was unknown how it blew, but the hole in the stone made a humming sound. The moment the sound was heard, the white bats that charged down immediately retreated. They circled in the sky for a long time, not daring to charge down again. The strange vehicle passed through the bat swarm, but it wasn't attacked by the bat swarm again. It proceeded safely. Young Master Wen, don't tell me that puppet is alive. Lu Yunxian looked at the puppet in shock. He originally imagined that it was a machine-like dead object, but who knew that it would have such an anomaly? Zhou was also looking at the puppet. The puppet was standing on the pedal of the carriage, and was no longer pushing the rocker arm. However, the strange vehicle was still moving forward at a constant speed. The rocker arm was also spinning on its own. The puppet stood at the front of the carriage with the stone instrument in its hand. It looked up as though it was looking into the distance, but it didn't have any facial features. It didn't even have eyes, so how could it look? It was incomparably strange. Zhou found it odd, but since it was beneficial to them, Zhou had no intention of attacking the puppet. He was only somewhat worried about where the strange vehicle would take them. The scene in front of them suddenly opened up as the white bats that filled the sky dispersed. The trio's gazes passed through the scattered white bats and saw a blue sky. Unlike the cave from before, this place was actually a vast and boundless space. One couldn't see the end of this space at a glance. In the distance, one could even see the sea and islands, and above them was a blue sky. However, the blue sky was a little too blue, like a sapphire. Zhou looked carefully and realized that it was really a sapphire. An unimaginably huge sapphire that occupied the entire sky formed the sky of this underground space. There was no sun or stars. The sapphire itself emitted a faint blue light, illuminating the entire underground space. At the same time, everything in the underground space was covered in a layer of light blue. In the next second, the strange vehicle landed on the blue sea. Zhou didn't know if it was an ocean, but he couldn't see the end of it. At a glance, all he saw was dark blue seawater. The strange vehicle could actually drive on the surface of the sea. Its stone wheels spun on the surface of the sea as though it was walking on flat ground. It sped across the surface of the sea, leaving behind 2 white waves. "What's that down there?" Lu Yunxian said as he pointed at the seawater beside him in horror. Zhou and Lu Ning looked at the sea and saw a huge shadow beneath them. It was as though a behemoth was swimming beneath the strange vehicle. All they could see was a huge shadow that they couldn't see its head or tail. And the shadow was gradually growing larger. Splash! The seawater spewed into the sky like a volcanic eruption, reaching at least hundreds of feet high. Huge waves swept up in all directions. The seawater struck the strange vehicle, but it didn't budge at all. However, a large amount of seawater poured into the back of the vehicle, drenching the 3 of them. However, Zhou and company weren't in the mood to care about the seawater on their bodies. Their 6 eyes widened as they stared at the sea beside the vehicle. They saw a huge black creature that looked like it was carved out of an obsidian. Half of its body extended out of the seawater. Its body was perfect and gorgeous, and its obsidian-like scales shimmered. Every inch of its body seemed to be exquisitely carved. Such a huge body couldn't be seen even with a magnifying glass. The massive body that was like a small mountain gave off an exquisite and dignified feeling. Dragon! That's a dragon! A dragon carved out of an obsidian. Lu Yunxian stammered as he pointed at the creature that had half its body extended out of the sea. Zhou expression didn't look too good either. The development of the situation seemed to have exceeded his expectations. Regardless of whether the terrifying creature in the sea was a real dragon or not, just the aura it emitted was enough to tell how terrifying an existence it was. It might even not be weaker than the white dragon in Dragon's Well. Boom! Boom! A series of waves sounded as the seawater around the strange vehicle churned. Large amounts of seawater surged over, causing Zhou and company to stagger. However, their gazes weren't on the vehicle. Outside the strange vehicle, black dragon heads tore through the wave. 1, 2, 3. When Zhou saw the 9th black dragon extend its head out of the sea, he felt a little numb. Roar! The 9 creatures carved out of obsidian roared at the strange vehicle in unison. The sound waves instantly surged towards the strange vehicle. Even the seawater was struck by the sound waves, forming huge waves that surged towards the tiny strange vehicle from all directions. "We're doomed." Lu Yunxian's expression changed drastically. With such a terrifying creature and such a terrifying sound wave, it was likely that they wouldn't be able to escape today. Zhou gripped the banana fan tightly, prepared to fight to the death. Even though he knew that he wasn't its match, he couldn't just sit back and wait for death. Woo! However, the strange sound of a stone instrument sounded in front of the vehicle again. With the humming sound, the surrounding sound waves and huge waves dissipated at the same time, preventing them from approaching the strange vehicle. The 9 black dragons stared at the strange vehicle covetously, but none of them pounced forward. All they did was watch the strange vehicle slowly drive to the other side of the sea. Zhou and company's hearts raced. After the strange vehicle distanced itself from the 9 black dragons, Zhou turned his head to take another look. He saw the 9 obsidian-like dragons roaring at the sky as though they were venting the anger in their hearts. And under the sea, Zhou realized that the lower half of their bodies were connected. It was like a black mountain sinking into the sea. Only then did he realize that it wasn't 9 dragons, but a monster with 9 dragon heads. Chapter 289. As the strange vehicle sped across the sea, the puppet continued standing in front of the vehicle, staring into the distance, motionless like a statue. "Is this how I came back?" Lu Ning's face was filled with questions. She couldn't imagine what she had experienced while she was unconscious. Zhou leaned against the back of the vehicle, gaming on his phone. He wanted to see if he could control the blood-colored avatar to walk the same path. Although he now knew that it was probably useless for the blood-colored avatar to walk over, even if he could pass through the White Bat Cave, it was impossible for him to pass through the underground sea protected by the 9-headed dragon. However, there was nothing to do in the vehicle. Lu Ning was resting while Lu Yunxian was observing the situation ahead. Since Zhou had nothing to do, he took out his phone and began grinding. Zhou sat at the back with only the sea behind him. Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning couldn't see what he was playing. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to follow the strange vehicle's path at full speed. Soon, a large swath of blood threadworms surrounded him. Zhou didn't have the patience to bother with them as he ran at full speed. When his primordial energy was full, he would strike at the blood threadworms. After killing a large number of blood threadworms, quite a number of crystals dropped. However, legendary crystals were useless to Zhou. Instead, Zhou picked up the eggs that dropped from the blood threadworms and hatched them. The blood threadworms themselves weren't strong, but if there were a large number of them, it would be different. Even an epic expert would have no choice but to retreat. Zhou hatched quite a number of blood threadworms and planned on seeing if they were useful. If they were useful, he could keep them. If they weren't, he could feed them to his pets as food. Where can I find a speed-type mount? I have to rely on my 2 legs to run every time. It expends my primordial energy, but I can't do anything else. Zhou used his primordial energy skill to increase his speed. After running for a while, he needed to recover his primordial energy. Furthermore, it was quite tiring. Only then did he realize that he needed a mount. To be called a genius among geniuses by the former principal, Zhou naturally had something extraordinary about him. His divergent thinking and memory far exceeded the average person's. He memorized the complicated route that the strange vehicle took at such a high speed, and soon, he arrived at the White Bat Cave. Looking at the star-like ores in the cave, Zhou suddenly had an idea. He wondered if he could dig out these ores in-game. With this in mind, he gave it a try. The ore wasn't difficult to dig. The blood-colored avatar shattered the rock beside the ore and dug out a translucent milky white crystal. Obtained crystal stone. Weight 21 grams. Crystal purity 0.12. This crystal is actually something recognized by the game, but what's the use of primordial crystal stones? Don't tell me it's like essence gold that can be used to create weapons that can kill dimensional creatures? Zhou was alarmed. Unfortunately, there was no storage space in the game. Even if he knew that these primordial crystals were useful, he could not take them away. I wonder if there are any companion beasts with storage functions. I have to get one. Otherwise, it would be a pity to see so many things go to waste. Zhou had heard of such a companion beast, but he had never seen it before. He didn't know where it would drop. Not long after entering the bat cave, Zhou didn't wait for the white bats to attack. Instead, he first attracted their attention, attracting the nearby white bats. There were no strange vehicles in-game. If he were to fall into the swarm of bats, he would definitely be surrounded and die. Therefore, Zhou planned on clearing the way and killing the white bats first before dropping some items. If he was lucky, he might even be able to get a white bat to use as a mount. This fellow's flying speed was extremely fast, making it a rare flying pet. Zhou was very interested in obtaining one. The only worry was that the epic companion egg wouldn't be able to hatch completely. Zhou lured a group of white bats over before striking out with his fan. Immediately, he sent the swarm of white bats flying. Their bodies turned into ice sculptures in midair and shattered when they slammed into the stone wall. Zhou was delighted to see dozens of white bats killed with a single fan. Quite a number of crystals dropped. If only all epic creatures were as easy to kill as white bats, Zhou thought greedily. Unfortunately, it wasn't easy to find an epic creature with such a weak physique. Furthermore, it was rare for epic creatures to appear in large groups. In some small dimensional zones, epic creatures typically appeared alone. It was rare to see them in super dungeons like Zhuolu. After scanning the battlefield, he realized that the crystals dropped by the white bats were basically speed crystals. Epic crystals were very useful, but it was useless for Zhou to absorb them. He couldn't take them away either. Looking at the crystals on the ground, Zhou felt his heart ache as though he had lost the jackpot. Storage companion beast. I have to get a storage companion beast, Zhou shouted inwardly. As he lured monsters and killed them, Zhou killed countless white bat. Although he didn't count them in detail, there were at least 400 to 500 of them. The crystals that dropped were all basic stat crystals. Ding! A unique sound of something dropping sounded. Zhou looked at the pile of white bat corpses and his eyes lit up. Among the crystals, one of them shimmered with a blue glow. The words on it were also different. Poison 13. Zhou was overjoyed as he hurriedly got the blood-colored avatar to pick up the poison crystal. After absorbing it, his poison stat reached 13 points. The poison stat allowed Zhou to have good poison resistance. Furthermore, some special epic primordial energy skills had special stat requirement. Zhou thought to himself that if he could obtain a primordial energy skill with poison in the future, the poison stat would definitely come in handy. Seeing that the white bats could drop poison crystals, Zhou's mind was stirred. He continued charging forward and constantly lured monsters to kill large numbers of white bat. When he was halfway to the bat cave, Zhou lured a group of white bats over. With a flap of his fan, he immediately smacked a large number of bats to death. However, one of the bats phased and vanished as though it had teleported. When it appeared again, it had crossed the Grand Wind and arrived in front of the blood-colored avatar. Only then did Zhou realize that the white bat was somewhat different. It was larger and different from the paleness of the typical white bat. This white bat looked like it was carved from white jade, and its eyes were like 2 sparkling diamonds. In the next second, the white jade bat's eyes shot out a beam that shot straight at the blood-colored avatar's body. Zhou hurriedly used ghost steps to dodge the white jade bat's attack and began fighting it. Chapter 290. The white bat's speed was surprisingly fast to begin with, and this white jade bat was ridiculously fast. It wasn't inferior to the Ghost King. Furthermore, it had a skill similar to Ghost Step. Furthermore, Zhou realized that it wasn't purely an increase in speed. This was because the white jade bat could use that skill to pass through the Grand Wind without suffering any damage. Could it be that this white jade bat knows true spatial transference? Or is it the legendary teleportation? Zhou was alarmed as he constantly controlled the blood-colored avatar to circle around the white jade bat. Dr. Darkness and Ghost Bride also helped from the side, but the white jade bat was too fast. They failed to injure it. Suddenly, Zhou heart stirred as he saw the white jade bat teleport over. After calculating the location, he suddenly raised his palm as a saber and slashed out with the demonic astral wheel. The blood-red wheel of light spun violently as it sliced at the white jade bat's body. The white jade bat flapped its wings and easily dodged the demonic astral wheel's attack. However, when it continued charging at Zhou, there was a puff. The demonic astral wheel flew back at an even faster speed than before as it slashed at the white jade bat's back. With Zhou primordial energy, it wasn't enough to seriously injure an epic creature with the demonic astral wheel. However, the white jade bat was an epic companion beast with fast speed and weak physique. When the demonic astral wheel slashed at its back, the spinning blade of light immediately tore open a long gash on its back. Blood splattered out. The white jade bat's body deviated from its trajectory after suffering this unexpected attack, causing it to lose control for a moment. Dr. Darkness stabbed out with the scalpel in his hand. The hand-blade technique of the life soul almost overlapped with his scalpel as it stabbed into the white jade bat's chest, fixing it in midair. Zhou didn't hesitate as he made Banana Fairy return to her true body. Banana Fairy puffed up her cheeks, and her cheeks, which had some baby fat to begin with, puffed up as she blew at the white jade bat. The white jade bat was immobilized by the scalpel and was sent flying by the Grand Wind. Its body quickly turned into an ice sculpture in midair. After slamming into the wall, it shattered. Ding! Zhou heard a special sound of something dropping. He hurriedly looked over and saw a milky white egg on the ground. Zhou was immediately overjoyed. I really got whatever I wanted. I'm really lucky today. However, on second thought, Zhou felt somewhat uneasy. He didn't know if he could hatch a complete epic companion egg. Regardless, Zhou got the blood-colored avatar to pick up the companion egg and check its stats. White Shadow of Poison, Epic Life Providence, Bone Corrosion Life Soul, Shadow of Darkness Strength, 27 Speed, 40 Constitution, 24 Essence Energy, 32 Primordial Energy Skill, Flash, Poison Beam, Poison Claw Companion Form, Arm Wings. After seeing the White Shadow of Poison stats, Zhou finally knew why it could pass through the Grand Wind. It couldn't teleport, but its Shadow of Darkness Life Soul could temporarily turn it into a shadow state. No matter how strong the wind was, it couldn't blow the shadow away. In its shadow state, the White Shadow of Poison was practically invincible. However, the White Shadow of Poison could only enter a shadow state for a short period of time. Only with the addition of the movement speed skill, Flash, did it look like he had teleported. Zhou had a general idea of its 3 skills, but the White Shadow of Poison's companion form left him somewhat puzzled. Many flying-type companion beasts had wings as companion forms, and a large portion of them had wings. However, this was the first time Zhou had heard of arm wings. When he looked at the White Shadow of Poison's information, especially its companion form, he saw a pair of white bat wings appear on the phone screen. However, they were different from ordinary wings. Above the pair of wings wasn't an ordinary skeleton, but a bat's claws. The arm wings could be considered wings, but they could also be considered a pair of arms. It was indeed very strange. Zhou carefully looked at the White Shadow of Poison's wings and realized that they were indeed very ordinary. However, they were surprisingly useful. They could be used as wings, allowing it to fly faster. They could also be used as a pair of hands, making them rather agile. In combat, they could be used to launch unexpected attacks. This is really good stuff. I just don't know if it can be fully hatched. Zhou really couldn't bear to use such a high-level companion egg as food. He gritted his teeth and prepared to hatch it. However, Zhou didn't blindly hatch it. He first held the companion egg and grinded the white bats for a while. After obtaining a few primordial energy crystals, he picked them up and placed them beside the blood-colored avatar. Then, he got the blood-colored avatar to sit on the primordial energy crystals. With 2 primordial energy crystals in hand, he chose to hatch it. In an instant, Zhou felt the primordial energy in his body being drained. His Dao body's primordial energy recovery ability couldn't recover in time. At that moment, the 2 primordial energy crystals in the blood-colored avatar's hand came into effect. They frantically injected primordial energy into the blood-colored avatar's body. The primordial energy crystal under his but also injected quite a bit of primordial energy, but it wasn't as fast as the primordial energy crystal in his hand. Although he had the Dao body and primordial energy crystal's dual recovery, hatching a companion egg required too much primordial energy in a short period of time. He still couldn't keep up with the supply, making Zhou feel the pain of having his flesh and blood sucked dry. After enduring for more than 20 seconds, just as Zhou thought that the blood-colored avatar was about to explode from the absorption, the companion egg finally transformed into a white beam of light and fused into the blood-colored avatar's body. At the same time, a white bat tattoo appeared on Zhou's back. Clearly, the hatching had been successful. It's done. Zhou was overjoyed as he hurriedly looked at the white shadow of poison stats. It was the same as before, still at the epic stage. It hadn't dropped in level, and its stats were identical to before. They hadn't decreased at all. Zhou eagerly summoned the white shadow of poison and sat on its back. He rode it deep into the bat cave and indeed, his speed was much faster. With the help of the white shadow of poison, Zhou's grinding speed became even faster. Along the way, he obtained another poison crystal and primordial energy crystal. The poison crystal only had 9 points, so it was useless for Zhou, who had 13 poison stat points. However, Zhou liked the flash primordial energy skill crystal very much. He directly absorbed it and comprehended rank 6 flash. This was a flying skill that required wings to be used. It could greatly increase one's flight speed. With the white shadow of poison on him, Zhou was very adept at using it. If he wasn't in a rush to scout ahead, Zhou really wanted to grind here for a few months to get more good stuff. After passing through the bat cave, Zhou finally saw the boundless underground sea. He couldn't help but look deep into the sea as he explored the 9-headed dragon's ruins. Chapter 291. Zhou summoned White Shadow of Poison and made it fly as high as possible. He flew close to the sapphire sky, hoping to avoid the 9-headed dragon's eyes and ears and successfully traverse the underground sea. Zhou kept staring at the sea and didn't notice the terrifying shadow. Suddenly, a blue light flashed on the game screen before the entire screen went black. The blood-colored avatar had died for some unknown reason. What was that? Zhou frowned as he looked at his phone, but unfortunately, he didn't agree. He only knew that it wasn't a 9-headed dragon, but something from the sapphire sky. Thankfully, we came in a strange vehicle. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to cross the underground sea. Just as Zhou was about to restart the game, he heard Lu Yunxian, who had been in charge of watching, shout, "There's land ahead." Zhou and Lu Ning stood up and saw the direction the strange vehicle was heading in. Indeed, there was a silver beach. The sand there was smoother than any sand Zhou had ever seen. It was like snow. The strange vehicle stepped onto the beach, leaving 2 deep grooves in the sand as it continued forward. Just as they crossed the sea, a white desert appeared in front of them. It was an endless expanse of snow-like sand. Zhou originally imagined that the strange vehicle would continue running for a while, just like in the underground sea. It would take at least an hour or 2. However, just as Zhou sat down and was about to take out his phone to continue grinding, he heard Lu Yunxian's voice. "Young Master Wen, look. What's that?" Zhou, whose but hadn't warmed up, had no choice but to get up again and look deep into the desert. From afar, he saw something that looked like a flag hanging on the sand. The reason why it looked like a flag was because the flagpole of that thing was crooked, like a big snake that was not straight standing on the sand. There was a piece of animal skin or something else hanging on the top of the flag. It was tattered and black, and its shape was similar to a pair of trousers that had not been washed for hundreds of years. Zhou focused his gaze and vaguely saw a pattern on the tattered underpants. However, without truth listener, his vision was clearly inferior to Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning. Lu Ning's expression changed slightly as she said in a strange voice, "I think I've seen the pattern on the flag in the stone palace that Lord Alcohol brought me to." "What pattern? Are you sure you saw correctly?" Zhou asked. Lu Ning looked at it for a while. When the car got closer, she said, "There's no mistake. It's that pattern. A triangular anchor with a long-haired woman's profile drawn on it. Because the pattern was too strange, I only took a few glances at it, but it left a deep impression on me." "An anchor with a woman's side profile?" Zhou was alarmed. He had seen such things before, but he never expected them to exist in such a place. "Yes, although I don't know who invented the anchor or who invented it, but according to some discoveries in history, this thing couldn't have appeared too early. At the very least, there had to be a big ship first, and then there was the anchor. Back in the Zhuolu myth, I didn't hear of any large ships. The anchor symbol appearing there naturally left a deep impression," Lu Ning added. "Could that pattern have been carved after someone entered?" Lu Yunxian pondered. "I thought so too, but the pattern was specially carved on a stone monument. Furthermore, it was placed on a stone table. It looks like it has experienced the baptism of thousands of years. It's almost blurry and can't be seen clearly. It doesn't look like it was carved recently. And on careful thought, it hasn't even been 100 years since the dimensional storms began. The Zhuolu battlefield only appeared in recent years. Who could bring the stone monument in so early? Furthermore, it has to be the same architectural style as the stone temple. The materials have to be the same, and the age has to be the same. Isn't that a little too difficult?" Lu Ning said. "It's indeed a little too difficult." Zhou nodded slightly, but his gaze was fixed on the tattered underwear that was swaying in the air. At that moment, he saw it clearly. It was likely a piece of animal skin, but it had been severely torn. However, the anchor symbol on the flag was still intact. Apart from the size difference, the anchor symbol was identical to the woman's profile. What's the meaning of this woman's anchor symbol? If this pattern already existed in ancient times, then who was its owner? Is it the woman on the anchor? Zhou guessed inwardly, but he didn't have an answer. The crooked flagpole wasn't a snake, but a black ancient vine. That was why it looked crooked. "What's sitting under the flag?" Lu Yunxian said as he stared at the bottom of the vine flag. Zhou could only see a grayish-black shadow. It was as though someone was sitting there with a cloak draped over them. When the strange vehicle got a little closer to the vine flag, Zhou realized that it wasn't a cloak. It was just a strange beast robe made of beast hide. It looked like a cloak because it covered his head. As for the creature inside the beast's skin, it was unknown what it was. Right now, only its bones were left. Each and every one of those bones was sparkling and translucent like jade, giving off a flawless feeling. It was a stark contrast to the coarse beast skin. Creak. When it was less than 10 meters away from the flag, the strange vehicle stopped. The puppet turned around and faced the skeleton in the beast skin. It bent its back slightly as though it was bowing. Why did it stop just like that? Zhou looked around in puzzlement. He was surrounded by white desert. He didn't see any stone palaces, cliffs, or blood threadworms. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like the place Lu Ning had mentioned. Lu Ning wore a look of puzzlement as well. The three of them waited for a while. Seeing that the strange vehicle had no intention of continuing and the puppet had stopped moving, they had no choice but to jump out of the back of the vehicle and size up the skeleton and the vine flag at close range. The tattered vine flag didn't have any words on it. There was only an anchor symbol. It didn't look special at all. This is the Zhuolu battlefield. Do you think this vine flag was the flag of one of the parties in the war back then? Lu Yunxian asked. Lu Ning shook her head slightly. Although there are many versions of myths and legends, they are all different. The Yellow Emperor race's totem is said to be a bear, while others say it's a dragon. The Qiyu race says it's a worm, a cow, or a bird. However, regardless of the version, their totem has something in common. They are basically animals. There has never been a version where it's a dead object, much less something like an anchor. That does make sense. Back then, it should have been a period of nature worship. There shouldn't have been an artificial totem like an anchor. Lu Yunxian also found his thoughts ridiculous. Just as they were studying it, the motionless skeleton that looked like a dead object suddenly stood up. It gave the three of them a fright as they hurriedly retreated and summoned their companion beast. They stared at the skeleton warily. Chapter 292. Are you willing to become my race's spokesperson in the human world? My race will bestow upon you supreme glory. Eternal glory will illuminate the world and make you an unlucky existence. The skeleton held the flagpole of the rattan flag in one hand and stood tall on the white sand. Although only a skeleton was left, the spirit that looked down on the heavens made people's hearts tremble. It was as if there were millions of soldiers following behind him. As long as he gave the order, they could flatten the entire world. As for the skeleton's eyes, there were two blazing white flames flickering in them. They were like two eyes as it stared straight at Zhou, who was standing between Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning. As the skeleton's voice sounded, Zhou felt a sense of disgust and contempt rise in his body. It was the emotion of the sigh of the king. Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning looked at Zhou and the skeleton in bewilderment, unsure of what was going on. With their knowledge, they had no idea that there was such a thing as a representative. However, they saw a terrifying glow burning on the skeleton's body. It was as though a god had descended into the world. The originally ordinary vine flag also emitted a brilliant glow, especially the flag's surface. It was like a sun that no one could look straight at. Young Master One, I once heard that the 6 heroes also obtained the heritage of powerful creatures to become hero-like existences. Could it be that there's a similar opportunity here? Lu Yunxian said to Zhou. Zhou also knew that there was a high chance that this place was like the Holy Temple in the Holy Land. It could pass down the bloodline power of a race. However, the sigh of the king gave him a bad feeling, so Zhou didn't plan on accepting it. What race are you? Zhou wasn't in a hurry to reject it as he asked the skeleton. It wasn't easy for him to see the anchor symbol again. Since it was the symbol of a certain race, Zhou wanted to know from the skeleton which race it belonged to. Your soul tells me that you aren't willing to be my race's representative in the human world. What a pity! What a pity! As the skeleton spoke, the glow on its body converged. The glow on the flag also dimmed. The skeleton slowly sat back on the ground. Just like before, it sat against the vine flag and lowered its head, returning to its lifeless state. Can you not be so straightforward? At least answer a few of my questions? Zhou felt depressed. The answer was clearly in front of him, but he couldn't unravel the mystery. It made Zhou have the urge to agree to the skeleton and know the answer. Dang dang dang. As the skeleton returned to silence, the strange car suddenly started to move again. The puppet pushed the rocker arm, causing the strange car to move again. The trio hurriedly jumped onto the strange vehicle. When they arrived at the stone beam, they used flames to open a path and burned the blood threadworms on the nearby mountain wall. Then, the three of them stepped on the mountain wall and quickly reached the stone beam. Indeed, there was a stone hall built against the mountain opposite them. It was as though half a palace was growing on the mountain wall. At a glance, Zhou saw the highest point of the palace. On top of a stone roof, there was a stone anchor carving. On the front of the anchor was a woman's side profile. However, the situation in front of him left Zhou with no time to carefully size up the anchor stone carving. This was because in front of the stone hall, Lord Alcohol and more than 10 people had summoned all sorts of companion beasts and were ready for battle. They seemed to be staring at something inside the palace's door. As they were motionless and didn't make a sound, Zhou and company didn't discover their existence before they arrived. After Zhou and company rushed up the stone beam, Lord Alcohol and company immediately looked at Zhou and company. Instantly, the atmosphere turned tense. Lord Alcohol, you unscrupulous fellows. You took so many benefits from the overseer, but not only did you betray him, you even tried to harm Adjutant, and aren't you being too ruthless? Lu Ning said coldly as she stared at Lord Alcohol and company. The moment Lu Ning said that, the expressions of Lord Alcohol and the dozen or so people changed drastically. They opened their mouths as though they were saying something, but Zhou suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. He didn't hear anything. All he saw was Lord Alcohol and company constantly opening their mouths to speak. Their mouths moved the same way, as though they were constantly repeating 3 words. Don't speak. Zhou read their mouths and connected it to the anxious expressions on Lord Alcohol and company's faces. He immediately had an ominous feeling as he hurriedly tugged at Lu Ning, indicating for her not to speak. Lu Ning also realized that something was amiss. She had already shut her mouth, but she suddenly heard a rumbling sound coming from the palace. It sounded like thunder. Chapter 293. The sound grew louder and louder, as though thunder was rapidly approaching from the horizon. Boom! The moment the sound came out of the stone temple, it was like a clap of thunder exploding above everyone's heads. Zhou felt his ears buzz as though his head was about to split open. Blood seeped out of his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. He couldn't hear anything for a moment. The others weren't much better than Zhou. Some of Lord Alcohol and company had already vomited blood. Even their companion beasts were affected as their expressions changed drastically. Some companion beasts were clearly injured. However, Lord Alcohol and company covered their ears and didn't move. They remained motionless. Zhou didn't dare move again when he saw this situation. The sound was too sinister. Just a tremor above his head had nearly knocked him unconscious. Who knew what would happen if he continued speaking? Zhou already had the thought of retreating to the other side of the stone beam. The other side didn't seem to be affected. As long as he retreated to the other side of the stone beam and shouted, he could use the terrifying sound to easily finish off Lord Alcohol and company. Lord Alcohol kept staring at Zhou and company. When he saw the change in Zhou's eyes, he seemed to guess something. He opened his mouth and said something to Zhou, but he didn't make a sound. Zhou carefully identified it for a while and realized that Lord Alcohol had said, "Don't move. The air flow can also cause an echo. When the time comes, we will all die. If we could run, we would have done so long ago." Zhou didn't know if what he said was true, but seeing that they didn't seem to have any intention of moving, he guessed that they would have long fled if they could. "It's impossible for us to stay here forever, right?" Zhou mouthed to Lord Alcohol. "Wait. In another hour or so, the echo will disappear," Lord Alcohol said. Zhou's heart stirred when he heard that. Now that Lord Alcohol and company didn't dare move, they could still maintain peaceful coexistence. However, once the echo's restriction on them disappeared, Zhou and company might not be a match for Lord Alcohol and company. Although Zhou had the banana fan, Lord Alcohol and company were clearly not weaklings. Even someone like Enshing had been defeated by them. Lord Alcohol and company definitely couldn't be underestimated, especially Lord Alcohol. He had once experienced the dimensional storms and was even in the company of figures like Jing Daoxian and Zhang Daotian. He was definitely not as simple as an old man. If I don't take the opportunity to deal with them now, I'm afraid the three of us will suffer later, Zhou Wen thought. However, the three of them weren't immune to Huayin's damage either. Dealing with Lord Alcohol and company now seemed to be the same as dealing with themselves. Unfortunately, Truth Listener is still evolving. Otherwise, Truth Listener would be of some use against the echo. Zhou Wen thought of Truth Listener and glanced at the chaos space. He saw that it was still in the state of a stone egg. He didn't know when it would complete its evolution. Other than Truth Listener, is there no other way? Zhou Wen struggled to think of a way to deal with Echo. Banana Fairy definitely couldn't do it. She was an offense-type companion beast and didn't have good defense. Now that she couldn't see the enemy, she couldn't retaliate. Dr. Darkness was even more useless under such circumstances. Without an opponent, he couldn't use his abilities. As he doctor. Without he. Zhou Wen thought for a moment. Although Ghost Bride wasn't afraid of the echo, it wasn't of much help to Zhou Wen's present situation. It was impossible for Ghost Bride to help them resist the echo. Unless the echo itself is directional. Zhou Wen carefully recalled the details of the echo explosion and felt that although they were relatively far from the stone temple, they didn't have the advantage. The echoes seemed to get louder the further they went. They didn't seem any different from Lord Alcohol and the others standing in front of the stone temple. Just as Zhou Wen was pondering over it, he saw Lu Yunxian winking at him. He kept opening his mouth to say something, but Zhou Wen didn't notice it as he had been looking at Lord Alcohol and company. Now that he noticed Lu Yunxian, he could quickly tell from his lips that he was saying, "I have a way to resist the echo." "You can block the echo?" Zhou Wen also mouthed to communicate with Lu Yunxian, but unfortunately, Lu Yunxian didn't have the ability to read lip. All he did was keep repeating his words. Zhou Wen thought for a moment. Lu Yunxian was a very reliable person. From the looks of it, he wouldn't lie. Zhou Wen hesitated for a moment before attempting to walk towards Lu Yunxian. He wasn't far from Lu Yunxian to begin with, only about 2 to 3 steps away. The moment he took a step forward, he immediately heard rumbling thunder in the stone temple. It erupted almost instantly. Boom! A bolt of lightning exploded, causing Lord Alcohol and company to bleed from their 7 orifices. Even the companion beasts were no exception. As for Zhou Wen and company, they were fine. In front of them was a very strange companion beast. The companion beast looked like a headless pig. Its body was round and oval, and it didn't have a head or tail. It had 4 hooves, making it look very strange. However, such a stupid-looking companion beast actually used a strange energy fluctuation to withstand the terrifying sound wave, preventing the trio from suffering the impact of the sound wave. Zhou Wen's eyes narrowed as he looked at Lord Alcohol and company. Lord Alcohol wasn't in a good state to begin with, so his face turned even paler when he saw this scene. "Young Master One, how about we make a deal?" Lord Alcohol mouthed. "How?" Zhou Wen directly said that, immediately causing thunder to rumble in the stone temple. Once again, it transformed into an echo wave that exploded above the stone temple. Bam! Bam! Some companion beasts were knocked to the ground. Lord Alcohol and more than 10 others were bleeding from their 7 orifices. They were slightly weaker and had already collapsed to the ground. These sounds triggered more echoes. Thunder rumbled outside the stone temple as though Thunder God was enraged. The echoes kept bombarding the area. A few people on Lord Alcohol's side were already bleeding from their 7 orifices. It was unknown if they were dead or alive. The situation on Zhou Wen's side wasn't looking good either. The echoes were too powerful. The strange companion beast's body trembled as though it couldn't hold on any longer. Zhou glanced sideways and saw Lord Alcohol advance instead of retreating. He charged into the stone temple despite the thunderous sound. "Let's enter the stone temple." Zhou heart stirred as he got Lu Yunxian to control the companion beast and head in the direction of the stone temple. Zhou originally imagined that the sound would be more terrifying closer to the stone temple, but when he arrived outside the stone temple, he realized that the further he was from the stone temple, the louder the sound became. Although the echoes were still terrifying inside the stone temple, they weren't as terrifying as when they were outside. Zhou sized up the stone temple and saw that there were many stone tools inside. Most of them were very crude, and Lord Alcohol was running towards the back door of the stone temple. The terrifying echoes only made him vomit blood and fail to kill him. Chapter 294. Where did Enshing fall from? Zhou asked Lu Ning. In the fault of the rear hall, Lu Ning said. Zhou hurriedly got Lu Yunxian to control his companion beast as the three of them rushed into the rear hall. If the front hall was considered a building, then the rear hall was basically a huge cave. Basically, 80% of it still maintained its original appearance. Only a few places had traces of artificial excavation. On the left side of the cave was a stone drum that emitted thumping sounds. The terrifying sound wave was emitted from the stone drum. However, now that Zhou and company were close to the stone drum, they couldn't sense the might of the echo. The power of the sound wave was only equivalent to a legendary sound wave attack. On the other side of the cave, there was a huge crack that was hundreds of meters long. And at the back of the cave there was a strange fruit tree. The fruit tree was 20 to 30 meters tall, and its crown was like a huge umbrella. Its leaves were dense, and its entire body was as black as ink. Only the leaves had some tiny white meridians. Between the black leaves were many fruit. However, upon closer inspection, one couldn't help but be alarmed. This was because the fruits looked like babies sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed. It was indescribably strange and terrifying. Furthermore, Zhou looked at the strange tree. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like the dead man tree in the mysterious phone, but there were some minute differences. Lord Alcohol had already run under the tree. He flew up and reached out to pluck the infant-like fruit. Zhou didn't know if it was an illusion, but he saw the fruit move on its own and take the initiative to meet Lord Alcohol's palm before being held in his hand. I originally planned on letting them give it a try, but there's nothing I can do now. Lord Alcohol's eyes were red as he stared at the strange fruit that resembled a jade doll and swallowed it. "What's that fruit?" Zhou asked Lu Ning. Lu Ning wore a puzzled look as well. When we first came in, there was only the front of the rear hall. There were no stone drums or fruit trees in the back. Without any hesitation, Zhou drew his bamboo blade and slashed at Lord Alcohol, who had swallowed the fruit with the demonic astral wheel. Since he had already become a mortal enemy, he had to kill the enemy with all his might. He couldn't give the enemy any chances. Zhou didn't know what would happen after Lord Alcohol swallowed the fruit. Although he wanted to know, he wasn't willing to wait for the outcome. Lu Ning and Lu Yunxian had the same thoughts. The two forces, one ice and one fire, struck Lord Alcohol together with Zhou Wen's demonic astral wheel. After Lord Alcohol swallowed the fruit, he stood there motionless like a fool. He lowered his head and hunched his body, looking extremely strange. Just as the three forces were about to strike him, Lord Alcohol suddenly raised his head and spread his arms. He leaned back and let out a painful roar. A terrifying force erupted from his body as a powerful shockwave shattered the trio's strength. However, this terrifying force wasn't targeted at the trio. The expressions of Zhou and company immediately turned nasty. Zhou summoned Banana Fairy, who opened her mouth and blew a gust of grand wind at the roaring Lord Alcohol. The cold wind immediately blew Lord Alcohol's body away as he slammed into the stone wall at the back of the cave, leaving a huge crater in it. Lord Alcohol's body twisted as he leaned against the gravel pit on the mountain wall. His body was covered in frost as he closed his eyes and remained motionless. However, the ominous feeling in Zhou Wen's heart intensified. With bamboo blade in hand, he instantly appeared in front of Lord Alcohol with ghost steps and stabbed at his chest with transcendent flying immortal. At that critical moment, one of Lord Alcohol's hands suddenly moved. The veins on his hand protruded as purple snakes wrapped around his arm. Furthermore, his arm emitted a strange blood-colored luster. At such a close distance, Lord Alcohol managed to grab the bamboo blade's lightning-fast blade with one hand. The extremely sharp bamboo blade failed to sever his palm. Lord Alcohol held the bamboo blade and his palm was cut by the blade. Blood flowed out, but he didn't seem to feel anything. All he did was hold the blade and open his eyes. He slowly stood up from the gravel pit. As he stood up, his body also underwent a huge change. His broken bones automatically healed, his white hair gradually turned black, and his hunched and emaciated figure gradually became tall and majestic. His entire outline, essence, and spirit seemed to be undergoing a miraculous change. Lord Alcohol, who originally looked like an old man, had already become like a middle-aged man after he slowly stood up. There were no signs of aging. It was unimaginable that the Lord Alcohol from before was the same person as he was now. Dr. Darkness silently came to Lord Alcohol's back and stabbed his scalpel at Lord Alcohol's waist. Bam! Without turning his head, Lord Alcohol struck out with his palm, immediately sending Dr. Darkness and his life soul flying. Dr. Darkness slammed into the mountain wall, and all his bones seemed to have been broken. He fell to the ground, twisted, and it was unknown if he could survive. Jing Daoxian didn't lie to me. The fruit of the longevity tree can indeed rejuvenate me. The feeling of youth is really great. Lord Alcohol's face was filled with excitement. As he spoke, he exerted force with his palm, sending Zhou Wen and his saber flying. In midair, Zhou Wen switched to the Godfiend Life Providence. Using the Godfiend Life Providence's powerful air control ability, he dispelled the terrifying force that Lord Alcohol had sent him flying and safely landed on the ground. He wasn't as miserable as Dr. Darkness. What is that fruit? How did it make Lord Alcohol so terrifying? Lu Yunxian said in horror as he looked at the increasingly youthful and majestic Lord Alcohol. I don't know. Zhou Wen's expression didn't look good. Lord Alcohol's aura was too terrifying. Zhou Wen could even vaguely sense an invisible aura rising from his body, like an invisible devil swaying on his body. What worried Zhou Wen the most was that the present Lord Alcohol had reached an unbelievable level of strength. Even Banana Fairy couldn't kill him. The three of them probably didn't have the strength to fight Lord Alcohol. Lord Alcohol had already become like a young man in his 20s. His black hair had grown long and drooped down due to his reverse growth. His muscles looked full of elasticity and strength. It was impossible to tell that he was a white-haired old man just moments ago. Let's go. Zhou Wen called out to Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning before turning to run towards the front hall. Since they weren't his match, staying behind meant death. Chapter 295. Zhou Wen held the banana fan and sent out a gust of grand wind. Bam! Lord Alcohol's body was once again blown away as he slammed into the mountain wall. However, this time, he stood up faster than the previous time. His injuries healed even faster. His gaze was like a blade as he stared at the banana fan in Zhou Wen's hand. It's impossible for an epic companion beast to have such powerful wind elemental powers. That's a mythical companion beast. Which race are you representing in the human world? Does that mean you're also a representative? Zhou Wen asked. Pui, I'm not a lackey. I'm Lord Alcohol. I'm a lord no matter where I go. I'm not anyone's dog. Lord Alcohol stared coldly at Zhou Wen. Forget it. It doesn't matter which race you represent. All of you will die today. With that said, Lord Alcohol's majestic figure took a step forward and arrived in front of Zhou. He grabbed at Zhou's head. Zhou's figure moved as the wings on his back spread out. He flashed like a shadow and dodged Lord Alcohol's grab. Boom! The strength in Lord Alcohol's hand left 5 finger marks that were more than a meter long on the mountain wall more than 100 meters away. It left Zhou alarmed. Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning attacked at the same time. 2 completely different powers, ice and fire, blasted at Lord Alcohol's back. With a wave of his hand, Lord Alcohol shattered Lu Yunxian's flaming tiger and Lu Ning's ice snake. The 2 of them were sent flying as they vomited blood and crashed into the distance. It was unknown if they were dead or alive. Zhou sighed inwardly. Indeed, I should just stay at home and play games. Why go to the trouble of risking my life? However, there are some things that I have no choice but to do. Seeing Lord Alcohol walk towards him again, Zhou clenched the banana fan in his hand tightly. The only thing that could restrain Lord Alcohol now was the banana fan. However, using the Grand Yin Wind expended too much primordial energy. He couldn't use it constantly. This was a huge weakness. If Zhou advanced further and advanced to the epic stage, he might be able to use his life soul to resolve the problem of primordial energy expenditure. However, he didn't have a good solution now. Lord Alcohol, it looks like I won't be able to escape death today. Before I die, can you tell me what those fruits are? They actually have the magical ability to rejuvenate one's youth? Zhou wanted to stall for time. Lord Alcohol was clearly very excited. He had finally gotten what he had been pursuing for so many years. At that moment, he had a lot of smugness and emotions he wanted to vent. This is a longevity fruit. Its effects aren't as simple as rejuvenation. In ancient times, swallowing this fruit can allow one to ascend and directly transform into an immortal body. Lord Alcohol's face was filled with excitement. I heard you say that the news of the longevity tree was told to you by Jing Daoxian? Zhou asked again. That's right. Jing Daoxian, Zhang Daotian, and I grew up together. However, I don't have a life as good as Zhang Daotian's, nor do I have a shocking talent like Jing Daoxian. My luck isn't as good as theirs, but thankfully, I have a better life and have lived long enough, Lord Alcohol said. I've met Jing Daoxian a few months ago. Back then, Jing Daoxian had white hair and was an old man who looked even older than you. If the longevity fruit is really that good without any side effects, why doesn't he pluck the fruit himself and become a young man again? Zhou asked. I've naturally thought of this question. I originally wanted to let those fellows do an experiment, but unfortunately, you foiled my plans. However, from the looks of it, Jing Daoxian didn't lie to me. He probably disdains using the longevity fruit, Lord Alcohol said. Lord Alcohol, aren't you being too naive? You've lived to such an old age. Just think about it. Who wouldn't want to stay young forever? Zhou retorted. However, Lord Alcohol sneered and said, It's naturally impossible for anyone else, but Jing Daoxian is different. He's a natural devil. Common sense doesn't exist in him. What others spend their entire lives pursuing is nothing to him. As long as he wants it, he can obtain anything. Seeing that Lord Alcohol seemed to think highly of Jing Daoxian, Zhou deliberately retorted, No matter how powerful Jing Daoxian is, didn't he still lose to the hero king, Zhang Daotian? It's an exaggeration to say that he can obtain anything. Lord Alcohol immediately revealed a look of disdain. Although Zhang Daotian is considered a stunning genius, he's still much inferior to Jing Daoxian. Others believe that Zhang Daotian defeated Jing Daoxian, but they don't know that the only time Zhang Daotian beat Jing Daoxian was when he married Wan Yiqi. What do you mean? Zhou was somewhat curious. He wasn't just trying to stall for time. Back then, Jing Daoxian and Zhang Daotian fell in love with Wan Yiqi, but because Jing Daoxian's personality was extremely domineering and sinister, he did whatever he wanted. He gradually gained the title of a devil, while Zhang Daotian became the hero king. Therefore, Wan Yiqi ultimately chose Zhang Daotian, who represented justice and kindness. Unfortunately, she never expected. At this point, Lord Alcohol sneered. What didn't she expect? Zhou pressed. She didn't expect herself to be a stumbling block to justice, Lord Alcohol said mockingly. On the second day after Wan Yiqi and Zhang Daotian got engaged, Wan Yiqi advanced to the epic stage and obtained a life soul. Do you know what her life soul is called? What's it called? Zhou knew that Lord Alcohol only needed someone to respond to him. Haha, her life soul is actually the Slaughterer Queen. If Wan Yiqi wants to live, she has to kill a person every day to provide for the Slaughterer Queen. Otherwise, the Slaughterer Queen will turn on her master. Furthermore, as time passes, the Slaughterer Queen becomes stronger, and the more lives she needs. Therefore, Wan Yiqi passively became the most evil devil in the world. No matter how unwilling she was, she became a stumbling block for justice, the kind of person she didn't like. Can't she kill dimensional creatures? Zhou asked curiously. No, she can only kill. The Slaughterer Queen only wants human lives. Lord Alcohol said with a sneer. Wan Yiqi told Zhang Daotian about her life soul, believing that he could help her. Unfortunately, no one can change the power of a life soul. Wan Yiqi still killed someone under the influence of the life soul, and Zhang Daotian chose to let Wan Yiqi be punished by the Federation's laws. There's actually such a thing? Why haven't I heard of it? Zhou was somewhat puzzled. Of course you can't see it in the history books. This is because when Wan Yiqi was about to be sentenced to death, Jing Daoxian stormed the Federation building and killed until there was a river of blood. Almost no one survived. When Zhang Daotian returned, he saw that the ground was littered with corpses. Only Wan Yiqi was standing there without a single scratch on her. On the snow-white wall behind her, there were a few bloody words written in large, bloodied letters. If she lived, the Federation lived. If she died, the Federation would be destroyed. Chapter 296. For the sake of face, the Federation can only say that Zhang Daotian chased Jing Daoxian away. Actually, it's about the same. Jing Daoxian had indeed been severely injured in that battle. If he had really fought Zhang Daotian back then, it was hard to say who would have won. Ever since then, the League has tried all means to take Jing Daoxian's life. All sorts of schemes have been used, but even so, they failed to take Jing Daoxian's life, Lord Alcohol said. Why didn't Jing Daoxian bring Wan Yiqi away? You even left her there? Zhou asked curiously. I don't know if others will take Wan Yiqi away, but Jing Daoxian is an arrogant fellow. Since Wan Yiqi didn't choose him in the past, he definitely won't take Wan Yiqi away no matter what happens, Lord Alcohol said indifferently. What a weirdo. Did Zhang Daotian kill Wan Yiqi in the end? Zhou had already forgotten that he was stalling for time. He was completely attracted by Lord Alcohol's story and couldn't help but ask. If Jing Daoxian doesn't die, who would dare kill Wan Yiqi? At that time, Jing Daoxian really had the ability to annihilate the Federation's parliament. Lord Alcohol glanced at Zhou and said, Don't ask me how Wan Yiqi survived. I don't know either. There are so many people in the League, so there will always be a way to resolve the problem of Wan Yiqi's life soul. However, ever since then, Wan Yiqi hasn't appeared in public. Alright, the story is over. You should be on your way. You're about to die, yet you're still so engrossed in listening to the stories of others. You're quite an interesting person. If you weren't a spokesperson, I could spare your life. What a pity, Lord Alcohol said as he walked over to Zhou. Would you believe me if I said that I'm not a spokesperson? Zhou asked. Wouldn't a spokesperson have a mythical companion beast? Lord Alcohol curled his lips and said disdainfully. Zhou naturally knew his situation, but he couldn't think of a good solution. In front of the huge disparity in strength, it was difficult to think of a plan to defy the heavens and change his fate. At the very least, Zhou couldn't think of one now. The only reliable method was probably to pluck a longevity fruit from a tree and eat it like Lord Alcohol. Perhaps he could become as powerful as Lord Alcohol. However, Zhou had a nagging feeling that the longevity fruit was somewhat sinister. Jing Daoxian hadn't eaten it himself, so there might be side effects. Besides, even if Zhou wanted to eat it, Jing Daoxian wasn't blind. How could he give him such a chance? I can only give it a try. Zhou gripped his bamboo blade tightly and slashed at Lord Alcohol with demonic astral wheel. Lord Alcohol pressed his finger on the demonic astral wheel as the violently spinning saber beam came to a stop. With a bang, it dissipated into light fragments. Banana Fairy blew a gust of grand wind at Lord Alcohol. Almost at the same time, Zhou used ghost steps and charged towards the longevity tree as though he had teleported. Bang! Lord Alcohol's figure suddenly vanished. As he dodged the grand wind, he struck Zhou down with his palm. He was actually able to keep up with ghost steps' speed. Zhou used the Dragon Gate Fairy skill and the Godfiend Life Providence to deflect the force in midair, but the force was just too powerful. He still slammed into the mountain wall, cracking it as he spat out a mouthful of blood. What a waste! This is enough for me to game many times. Zhou knew that he had no choice but to risk his life. He gripped his bamboo blade tightly and activated Sigh of the King. Saber beams streaked across the void like lightning as they crisscrossed Lord Alcohol's body. With the augmentation of Sigh of the King, Zhou pushed Transcendent Flying Immortal to its limit. However, there was the sound of metal clashing. Lord Alcohol used his finger as a sword to block all of Transcendent Flying Immortal's slashes. After using Transcendent Flying Immortal, Zhou failed to injure Lord Alcohol at all. He gritted his teeth and used Transcendent Flying Immortal a second time, but halfway through, Zhou's chest was struck by a sword beam and he was sent flying. After falling to the ground, Zhou struggled to sit up. The wound on his chest was still bleeding. If he hadn't dodged 2 centimeters in that moment of life and death, the sword beam would have pierced through his heart. You're really not bad. Back when Jing Daoxian was your age, he didn't have such strength. However, the more it's like this, the more I can't let you live. As Lord Alcohol spoke, he raised his palm again, hoping to kill Zhou. Zhou gritted his teeth and reached out to take out something from the chaos space. It was a small metal box with a note written by Wang Mingyuan inside. Although he didn't know if the note would be useful against a terrifying existence like Lord Alcohol, he had to give it a try no matter what. Teacher, please bless me. Seeing that Lord Alcohol was about to reach him, Zhou took out the note and opened it. He aimed the words, "Kneel and beg for mercy," at Lord Alcohol. Lord Alcohol's body swayed as his knees bent slightly. However, before Zhou could rejoice, Lord Alcohol's legs straightened again, preventing him from kneeling. It's over. Even teacher isn't effective this time. Zhou's heart chilled as he knew that he was doomed. A mere 4 words actually have the power to suppress a peak epic. Who wrote this? Zhang Daotian? No, his words aren't like that. Apart from him, who else in the league has such power? Lord Alcohol looked at the words, "Kneel and beg for mercy," in Zhou's hand and couldn't help but sneer. No matter who you are, you don't have the right to use these words on me. I'll always be Lord Alcohol. With that said, Lord Alcohol struck the palm, sending Zhou and the piece of paper flying. Bam! Zhou slammed into the stone wall again, creating a huge crater. Countless bones in his body had been broken, and his organs were burning with pain. Now, his situation was the exact opposite of Lord Alcohol's. The piece of paper didn't shatter as it floated to Zhou's side. From the looks of it, there's really no hope this time. Zhou glanced at the 4 words on the piece of paper, but when he looked at it, he realized that there were 3 more words on it. These 3 words were in front of the 4 words. They were much smaller than the words, kneel and beg for mercy, but no matter how small they were, it was impossible for him to only see them now. These 3 words seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Furthermore, apart from being a little smaller, the handwriting was still Wang Mingyuan's. The style of the words was something no one could imitate. My dear disciple, kneel and beg for mercy. Zhou read the 3 words together with the 4 words behind them as his expression turned odd. Teacher, you can't be messing with me, right? What's the point of me kneeling and begging for mercy now? A person like Lord Alcohol won't let me off just because I kneel and beg for mercy, right? Zhou thought to himself, but he felt that Wang Mingyuan's actions had a deeper meaning. It was impossible for him to do so for no reason. Seeing that Lord Alcohol was coming over again, Zhou gritted his teeth and prepared to see what Wang Mingyuan could do to help him survive. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.